Take it to trial. Take it to trial. Welcome in, grab a seat, hit the like and subscribe. Cause Sweet Peas on the mic with that spicy little vibe. Got the courtroom streaming in the chat going wild. We're debating heavy topics but still laughing like a child. From objections to confessions to the judge's side eye. If it's justice and it's messy, we gon' talk about why. Every day's a new case, every moment's a ride. And when Sweet Peas in the building, we be learning with pride. My eyes on deck, keep the room running smooth. Film freak therapist, you know, keeping everyone in the groove. Rachel with the facts, pretty brown girl with the sass. Moreldia and Fowler keep the peace in the chat. But Jason walks in and the ladies collapse. Chocolate. Take it to trial, where the truth gets loud and the laughs run wild. Sweet Peas got the spice, she's the queen of the aisle. Chat fam rolling deep, we've been here a while. Lights on, mics up, we gon' do this right. Take it to trial, every day, every night. Take it to trial. Morning shows are sharp, afternoon is on fire. And we catch every moment that the court might inspire. From witnesses whispering, the lawyers trying to hard. You know Sweet Pea breaks it down like a legal tarot card. Chats cracking jokes, dropping theories on the fly. We're serious when it counts, but we still testify. Minds hold it down when the trolls try to play. If you're out of line, court adjourned for the day. But when Jason logs in with that deep hello sound, the ladies in the chat, man, they all fall down. Take it, 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 take it to trial, where the truth gets loud and the laughs run wild. Sweet Peas got the spice, she's the queen of the aisle. Chat fam rolling deep, we've been here a while. Lights on, mics up, we gon' do this right. Take it to trial, every day, every night. Take it to trial. When the sun goes down and the cases get deep, after dark gets spicy, no secrets to keep. Taboo topics, big laugh, slap, happy crew. Sweet Pea says behave, but we never really do. It's opinions, confessions, stories untold, but we handle it with heart like the chat made a goal. Hey! Take it to trial, from day to night and every wild mile. Sweet Peas kneeling strong with her trademark style. And the fam in the chat always makes it worthwhile. Turn it up, show some love, hit the like on sight. Take it to trial, yeah, we live tonight. Take it to trial, yeah, we live tonight. Take it to trial.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Welcome over. If you are coming from the premiere, glad that you are joining us. As you can see, as I typically do, I have timed this perfectly. Like nobody could time this perfect but me. So you see how the premiere ended. We started our live feed and our judge just got to the bench. Like we won't have TiVo time really today, but it's okay. We'll work through it. We got many and plenty of things that we can do here. You say you made it here. Welcome, welcome over. I'm glad that a lot of people I see from the premiere, listen to her get sunk again. Because that's exactly what happened with her. She sunk herself over there. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to listen to this testimony again so she don't be shocked when she get this guilty verdict. But yeah, she's definitely probably going to be found guilty. The next thing that we have to worry about is how long will it take? Will it take 7 hours? Or will it be like 2 hours? I don't know. So here's to a good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. Hey, Callie, welcome in. Glad you're joining us. Glad you're joining us. Okay, let me do our welcome. Lasagna said, I am first. Numero uno up in this chat. Leon said, I second. I third, says Susie. Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon, Marilda. Hello, OnlyFan. Good evening. Welcome to the Mod Squad. Hey, Wanda. Hey, Martina. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good evening. I keep trying to figure out. I'm trying to get my coordination. I know we all over everywhere. Hey, Zaza. Hey. Oh, wow. Hey, Tracy. You say she tried, I guess. Yeah, she definitely tried. She tried. She got mixed up. And unfortunately, that's wanted to say 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, I'll put a survey out as soon as we go into verdict watch. I'll put a survey out. In the meantime, what I would like for you guys to do as we're watching closing arguments and different things like that, if there's any testimony that you're interested in listening to again while we wait for a closing argument, or while we wait for the verdict, please, please, please drop it in the chat. I'll be looking to see what most people put in the chat far as what we want to rewatch while we are waiting on the verdict. Unless we get our special guest, Tara Lynn, to come in, and she may want to chat with us. And if you don't know, Tara Lynn Fisher, the daughter of Tracey, Mama, I don't know, Tracey. I'm just gonna say Tracey. Was in our chat yesterday, and she was very informative. She was very open, honest, very vulnerable with the chat in regards to the situation and how this situation is affecting her family and affecting her thoughts and her position. So she came into our chat yesterday, and it was awesome. Yes, we are going to have a sit down one-on-one after the verdict is read and things of that nature. So definitely make sure you hit the like and subscribe button so you don't miss it. But yeah, unless she comes over here, we're for a game during verdict watch, right? I wonder if she's going down there for the verdict. I would be interested in that. A shout out to Kathy with Gossip, Rumor, Innuendo. If you don't know, she did give our channel a shout out this morning in regards to seeing Tara Lynn on our channel, right? Oh, little bitty taking the trial over here in the corner. Yes, a shout out to her. Y'all don't know, I follow her. I'm subscribed over there. She is awesome. I'll have one of the mods drop her link in the chat for you guys if you want to go over there and click and subscribe. She does, like, if you don't know her, most of us in the crime world, right? We all know each other in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And she does the morning funnies for us, like, far as I'm concerned, in regards to a crime. So awesome short videos that speak about the crime and in a funny way, a humorous way that, and kind of a recap of it. So awesome work over there. If one of the mods could please drop Kathy's link to her channel in the chat, that would be awesome. I truly, truly, truly appreciate it. Let's see here what we got going on. We are so we are in the thing. So I'm gonna put us into court, and let's see. I know we're gonna have to go through these old jury instructions, and then I guess we go into closing arguments. I'm not sure if he's gonna do his jury instructions like half and half. Sometimes they do part of the jury instructions and then they go into closing statements. Then they go back to the jury instructions. I guess we'll kind of figure out the layout once the judge tells us while he's on the bench. The other thing I do not know how much time each side has. I didn't hear that part, so maybe he'll talk about it now. I can't remember let me check. I can tell you right now, because I think openings were very, very short, y'all. I don't think openings were I don't think opening statements were about that. I don't think they were long at all. Let me see. Yeah, the defense opening statement, guys, was 16 minutes and 9 seconds. The state's opening statement was 34 minutes and 9 seconds. So if that gives y'all any indication of what we may be looking at for closing, I mean, it was not long at all. So there's the timing on them because I clipped them both and put them on our channel. So yeah, not long. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get in here. And it's probably going to be the jury instructions that's going to be the longest. But we'll see.
Be seated. Still on the record in the matter of State versus Grist, case number 241101170. Get my computer logged in, counsel, and we'll bring the jury out. Counsel, I put on your tables the jury instructions, the jury verdict form. Have you looked through them briefly?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any concerns?
No, Your Honor.
Mutabi?
Watabi?
I have not yet, but I believe the other prosecutors have it.
All right, then. Anything else the state needs to put on the record?
No, if we could wait for Mr. Pomeroy, he just went to get a drink. We'll be right back.
All right. Anything that you wish to put on the record, Mr. Basebar? You ready for me to bring the jury in, Mr. Pomeroy?
That's fine, Judge. Thank you.
All right, bring in the jury, please, Brad.
I realized I didn't put in the jury.
All rise for the jury. Thank you. Good morning. Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, on your chairs are the jury instructions for the closing instructions for this trial. There also is the jury verdict form for the various charges. You're free to read along with me or to just listen while I go through the instructions. You, of course, will be able to take these back to you into the jury room for your deliberations. The rules do require me to read these into the record. It takes a little bit of time to do so. I will do my best not to read too fast or too slow. After I've completed reading to you the closing jury instructions and the jury verdict forms, the state will give their closing argument. And Mr. Facemer, on behalf of the defense, will give his closing argument, and then the plaintiff for the state, because they have the burden of proof, has the option to do a rebuttal closing argument. After the state has completed their rebuttal argument, if they have any, then it'll be time for us to send you back to start your deliberations. We'll give you some last minute instructions at that point as well. Closing instructions number 1, closing roadmap. Members of the jury, you now have all the evidence. 3 things remain to be done. First, I'll give you additional instructions that you will follow in deciding this case. Second, the lawyers will give you their closing arguments. The prosecutor will go first, then the defense. Because the prosecution has the burden of proof, the prosecutor may give a rebuttal. Finally, you will go to the jury room to discuss and decide the case. Number 2, juror duties. You have 2 main duties as jurors. The first is to decide from the evidence what the facts are. Deciding what the facts are is your job, not mine. The second duty is to take the law I give you in the instructions, apply it to the facts, and decide if the prosecution has proved the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You are bound by your oath to follow the instructions that I give you, even if you personally disagree with them. This includes the instructions I gave you before trial, any instructions I may have given you during the trial, and these instructions. All the instructions are important. You should consider them as a whole. The order in which the instructions are given does not mean that some instructions are more important than others. Whether any particular instruction applies may depend on what you decide are the true facts of the case. If an instruction applies only to facts or circumstances you find do not exist, you may disregard that instruction. Perform your duties fairly. Do not let any bias, sympathy, or prejudice that you may feel toward one side or the other influence your decision in any way. You must also not let yourselves be influenced by public opinion. Number 3, closing arguments. When the lawyers give their closing arguments, keep in mind that they are advocating their views of the case. What they say during their closing arguments is not evidence. If the lawyers say anything about the evidence that conflicts with what you remember, you are to rely on your memory of the evidence. If they say anything about the law that conflicts with these instructions, you are to rely on these instructions. Number 4, legal rulings. During the trial, I've made certain rulings. I made those rulings based on the law and not because I favor one side or the other. However, if I sustained an objection, if I did not accept evidence offered by one side or the other, or if I ordered that certain testimony be stricken, then you must not consider those things in reaching your verdict. Number 5, judicial neutrality. As the judge, I am neutral. If I've said or done anything that makes you think I favor one side or the other, that was not my intention. Do not interpret anything I've done as indicating that I have any particular view of the evidence or the decision you should reach. Number 6, evidence closing. You must base your decision only on the evidence that you saw and heard here in court. Evidence includes what the witnesses said while they were testifying under oath and any exhibits submitted into evidence. Nothing else is evidence. The lawyer's statements and arguments are not evidence. Their objections are not evidence. My legal rulings and comments, if any, are not evidence. In reaching a verdict, consider all the evidence as I have defined it here and nothing else. You may also draw unreasonable inferences from that evidence. Number 7, items not admitted into evidence. Transcripts, police reports, or other written audio or visual materials may have been referenced during the trial, but not admitted as exhibits. It is common during deliberations for jurors to ask to review these materials or to have transcripts of what witnesses said during trial. These materials, other than what may have been admitted as exhibits, may not be requested as part of your deliberations. Number 8, witness credibility. In deciding this case, you will need to decide how believable each witness was. Use your judgment and common sense. Let me suggest a few things to think about as you weigh each witness's testimony. How good was the witness's opportunity to see, hear, or otherwise observe what the witness testified about? Does the witness have something to gain or lose from this case? Does the witness have any connections to the people involved in this case? Does the witness have any reason to lie or slant the testimony? Was the witness's testimony consistent over time? If not, is there a good reason for the inconsistency? If the witness was inconsistent, was it about something important or unimportant? How believable was the witness's testimony in light of other evidence presented at trial? How believable was the witness's testimony in light of your experience? Was there anything about the way the witness testified that made the testimony more or less believable? In deciding whether or not to believe a witness, you may also consider anything else you think is important. You do not have to believe everything that a witness said. You may believe part and disbelieve the rest. On the other hand, If you are convinced that a witness lied, you may disbelieve anything the witness said. In other words, you may believe all, part, or none of a witness's testimony. You may believe many witnesses against one or one witness against many. In deciding whether a witness testified truthfully, remember that no one's memory is perfect. Anyone can make an honest mistake. Honest people may remember the same event differently. Number 9, presumption of innocence. Closing. Remember, the fact that the defendant is charged with a crime is not evidence of guilt. The law presumes that the defendant is not guilty of the crimes charged. This presumption persists unless the prosecution's evidence convinces you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. Number 10, reasonable doubt. Closing. As I instructed you before, proof beyond a reasonable doubt is proof that leaves you firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. There are very few things in this world that we know with absolute certainty. And in criminal cases, the law does not require proof that overcomes every possible doubt. If the evidence leaves you firmly convinced that the defendant is guilty of the crime charged, you must find the defendant guilty. On the other hand, if there is a real possibility that she is not guilty, you must give the defendant the benefit of the doubt and return a verdict of not guilty. Number 11, direct and circumstantial evidence. Facts may be proved by direct or circumstantial evidence. The law does not treat one type of evidence as better than the other. Direct evidence can prove a fact by itself. It usually comes from a witness who perceived firsthand the fact in question. For example, if a witness testified he looked outside and saw it was raining, that would be direct evidence that it had rained. Circumstantial evidence is indirect evidence. It usually comes from a witness who perceived a set of related events, but not the fact in question. However, based on that testimony, someone could conclude that the fact in question had occurred. For example, if a witness testified that she looked outside and saw that the ground was wet and people were closing their umbrellas, that would be circumstantial evidence that it had rained. Before you can find the defendant guilty of any charge, there must be enough evidence, direct, circumstantial, or some of both, to convince you of the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It is up to you to decide. Number 12, defendant testifying. The defendant testified at trial. Another instruction mentions some things for you to think about in weighing testimony. Consider those same things in weighing the defendant's testimony. Don't reject the defendant's testimony merely because she is accused of a crime. Number 13, offense requires conduct and mental state. A person cannot be found guilty of a criminal offense unless that person's conduct is prohibited by law and, at the time the conduct occurred, the defendant demonstrated a particular mental state specified by law. Conduct can mean both an act or the failure to act, and the law requires a person to act. As to the mental state requirement, the prosecution must prove that at the time the defendant acted or failed to act, she did so with a particular mental state. For each offense, the law defines what kind of mental state the defendant had to have, if any. For some crimes, the defendant must have acted intentionally or knowingly. For other crimes, it is enough that the defendant acted recklessly with criminal negligence or of some other specified mental state. Later, I will instruct you on the specific conduct and mental state that the prosecution must prove before the defendant can be found guilty of the crimes charged. Number 14, inferring the required mental state. The law requires that the prosecutor prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant acted with a particular mental state. Ordinarily, there is no way that a defendant's mental state can be proved directly because no one can tell what another person is thinking. A defendant's mental state can be proved indirectly from the surrounding facts and circumstances. This includes things like what the defendant said, what the defendant did, and any other evidence that shows what was in the defendant's mind. 15, motive. The defendant's mental state is not the same as motive. Motive is why a person does something. Motive is not an element of the crimes charged in this case. As a result, the prosecutor does not have to prove why the defendant acted or failed to act. However, a motive or lack of motive may help you determine if the defendant did what she is charged with doing. It may also help you determine what her mental state was at the time. 16, do not consider punishment. In making your decision, do not consider what punishment could result from a verdict of guilty. Your duty is to decide if the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Punishment is not relevant to whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. Number 17, jury unanimity in deliberations. Because this is a criminal case, every single juror must agree with the verdict before the defendant can be found guilty or not guilty. That is, you must be unanimous in your verdict for each count charged. To help you in reaching unanimous agreement, I recommend that you not commit yourselves to a particular verdict before discussing all the evidence. In addition, you may not use methods of chance, such as drawing straws or flipping a coin. Rather, in the jury room, consider the evidence and speak your minds with each other. Listen carefully and respectfully to each other's views and keep an open mind about what others have to say. If there's a difference of opinion about what the evidence there's a difference of opinion about the evidence or the verdict, do not hesitate to change your mind if you become convinced that your position is wrong. On the other hand, do not give up your honestly held views about the evidence simply to agree on a verdict, to give in to pressure from other jurors, or just to get the case over with. In the end, your vote must be your own. A unanimous verdict must reflect the individual, careful, and conscientious judgment of each juror as to whether the defendant is guilty or not guilty. Number 18, four-person selection and duties. Among the first things you should do when you go to the jury room to deliberate is to appoint someone to serve as the jury foreperson. The foreperson should not dominate the jury's discussion, but rather should facilitate the discussion of the evidence and make sure that all the members of the jury get the chance to speak. The foreperson's opinions should be given the same weight as those of other members of the jury. Once the jury has reached a verdict, the foreperson is responsible for filling out and signing the verdict forms on behalf of the entire jury. For each offense, the verdict form will have two blanks, one for guilty and the other for not guilty. The foreperson will fill in the appropriate blank to reflect the jury's unanimous decision. In filling out the form, the foreperson needs to make sure that only one blank is marked for each charge. Number 19, jury questions during deliberations. These instructions should contain all the information you need to decide this case based upon the evidence. However, if you have a question or need clarification during deliberations, write a note and give it to the bailiff. I will review it with the lawyers. We will answer your question as appropriate. 20, deadlocked juries. The verdict must represent the considered judgment of each juror. In order to return a verdict, it is necessary that each juror agree. The verdict must be unanimous. It is your duty to consult with one another and to deliberate. Your goal should be to reach an agreement if you can do so without surrendering your individual judgment. Each of you must decide the case for yourself, but do so only after impartially considering the evidence with your fellow jurors. Do not hesitate to re-examine your own views and change your position if you are convinced it is mistaken. But do not surrender your honest conviction as to the weight or effect of the evidence solely because of the opinion of your fellow jurors or just to return a verdict. You are judges of the facts. Your sole interest is to determine the truth from the evidence in the case. Number 21, fact versus expert witnesses. There are two types of witnesses, fact witnesses and expert witnesses. Usually a fact witness can testify only about facts that he or she can see, hear, touch, taste, or smell. An expert witness has scientific, technical, or other special knowledge that allows the witness to give an opinion. An expert's knowledge can come from training, education, experience, or skill. Experts can testify about facts, and they can gain their opinions in their areas of expertise. You may have to weigh one expert's opinion against another's. In weighing the opinions of experts, you may look at their qualifications, the reasoning process the experts used, and the overall credibility of their testimony. You may also look at things like bias, consistency, and reputation. Use your common sense in evaluating all witnesses, including expert witnesses. You do not have to accept an expert's opinion. You may accept it all, reject it all, or accept part and reject part. Give it whatever weight you think it deserves. Number 22, law enforcement officer's testimony. You've heard the testimony of a law enforcement officer. The fact that a witness is employed in law enforcement does not mean that his or her testimony deserves more or less consideration than that of any other witness. It is up to you to give the witness's testimony whatever weight you think it deserves. Number 23, stipulation of fact. When lawyers agree that certain facts are true, it is called a stipulation of fact. You must accept any stipulated facts as having been proven. However, the significance of these facts, as with all other facts, is for you to decide. Number 24, multiple defendants or missing defendants. There has been evidence suggesting that persons other than the defendant may have been involved in the crime for which the defendant is on trial. Your duty in this case is to decide only whether the prosecutor has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the guilt of the defendant who is on trial. Number 25, separate consideration of multiple crimes. The defendant has been charged with more than one crime. It is your duty to consider each charge separately. For each crime charged, consider all the evidence related to that charge. Decide whether the prosecution has presented proof beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of that particular crime. Your verdict on one charge does not determine your verdict on any other charge. Number 26, date or time of offense is not an element. The state has alleged that the defendant committed the charged offense on or about certain dates. The exact date is not an element of the offense which the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. 27, usual and ordinary meanings instruction. Unless these instructions give a definition, you should give all words their usual and ordinary meanings. Instruction 28, mental states defined intentionally. A person acts intentionally or with intent when her conscious objective is to 1, engage in certain conduct, or 2, cause a certain result. Knowingly. A person acts knowingly or with knowledge when the person 1, is aware of the nature of her conduct, or 2, is aware of the particular circumstances surrounding her conduct, or 3, is aware that her conduct is reasonably certain to cause a particular result. Recklessly. A person acts recklessly when she is aware of a substantial and unjustifiable risk that 1, certain circumstances exist relating to her conduct, but she consciously disregards the risk and acts anyway, or 2, her conduct will cause a particular result, but she consciously disregards the risk and acts anyway. The nature and extent of the risk must be of such magnitude that disregarding it is a gross deviation from what an ordinary person would do in that situation. Conduct means either an act or an admission. Number 29, inferring intent. The intent with which an act is done denotes a state of mind and connotates a purpose in so acting. Intent being a state of mind is seldom susceptible of proof by and positive evidence. It must ordinarily be inferred from acts, conduct, statements, and circumstances. Thus, you would be justified in inferring that a person must have intended the natural and probable consequences of any act purposely done by them. 30. Party liability, definition of party to the offense. A person can commit a crime as a party to the offense. In other words, a person can commit a criminal offense even though she did not personally do all the acts that make up the offense. Here, Tracey Marie Grist is charged in count 1, 3, 4, and 5 as a party to the offense. Before a person can be found guilty as a party to the offense, you must find beyond a reasonable doubt that 1, Tracey Marie Grist had the mental state required to commit the charged offense, and 2, Tracey Marie Grist, A, directly committed the charged offense, or B, intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly solicited, requested, commanded, or encouraged another person to commit the charged offense, or C, intentionally aided another person to commit the charged offense, and 3, the charged offense was committed either by Tracey Marie Grist or Kevin Stanley Ellis or another person. 31. Elements of the charged crime, count 1, murder. The defendant, Tracey Marie Grist, is charged in count 1 with committing murder. You cannot convict her of this offense unless, based on the evidence, you find beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements. 1, Tracey Marie Grist is a party to the offense. 2, A, intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Matthew Rastelli, or B, intending to cause serious bodily injury to another, Tracey Marie Grist committed an act clearly dangerous to human life that caused the death of Matthew Rastelli, or C, Acting under circumstances evidencing a depraved indifference to human life, Tracey Marie Grist engaged in conduct which created a grave risk of death to another and thereby caused the death of Matthew Rastelli. After you carefully consider all the evidence in this case, if you are convinced that each and every element has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant guilty. On the other hand, if you are not convinced that one or more of these elements has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. Number 32, definitions applicable to count 1, murder. Bodily injury. Bodily injury means physical pain, illness, or any impairment of physical condition. Serious bodily injury. Serious bodily injury means bodily injury that creates or causes serious permanent disfigurement, protracted loss or impairment of the function of any bodily member or organ, or creates a substantial risk of death. Number 33, definition/explanation of depraved indifference. A person is guilty of murder if, acting under circumstances that demonstrate a depraved indifference to human life, she knowingly engages in conduct that creates a grave risk of death and in fact causes the death of another. Depraved indifference to human life means an utter callousness towards the value of human life and a complete indifference as to whether the actor's conduct will create a grave risk of death to another. To act with depraved indifference, the actor must do more than act recklessly. However, she does not have to have a conscious desire to cause death, nor does she need to be aware that the conduct is reasonably certain to cause death. In the context of depraved indifference, murder knowingly means that the person knew the nature of her conduct, that the conduct created a risk of death, and that the risk of death was grave. A grave risk of death means more than a substantial and unjustifiable risk. There must be a high likelihood that death will result. In order to find depraved indifference, you must evaluate all the circumstances surrounding the death from the standpoint of a reasonable person in the actor's position. In evaluating the evidence, you should consider the following factors. 1, the social value of the defendant's conduct. 2, the magnitude of the risk. 3, the defendant's knowledge of the risk. And 4, any precautions taken by the defendant to minimize the risk. Number 34, elements of the charged crime count 2, conspiracy to commit murder. The defendant, Tracey Marie Grist, is charged in count 2 of committing conspiracy to commit murder. You cannot convict her of this offense unless, based on the evidence, you find beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements. 1, Tracey Marie Grist. 2, intended that conduct constituting the crime of murder be performed. And 3, agreed with one or more persons to engage in or cause the performance of the conduct. After you carefully consider all the evidence in this case, if you're convinced that each and every element has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant guilty. On the other hand, if you are not convinced that one or more of these elements has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. Number 35, elements of the charged crime count 3, obstruction of justice. The defendant, Tracey Marie Grist, is charged in count 3 of committing obstruction of justice. You cannot convict her of this offense unless, based on the evidence, you find beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements. 1, Tracey Marie Grist is a party to the offense. 2, intended to hinder, delay, or prevent the investigation, apprehension, prosecution, conviction, or punishment of any person regarding conduct that constituted a criminal offense, and A, altered, destroyed, concealed, or removed any item or other thing, or B, made, presented, or used any item or thing known by the actor to be false, or C, provided false information regarding the suspect or witness, the conduct constituting an offense, or any other material aspect of the investigation. After you carefully consider all the evidence in this case, if you're convinced that each and every element has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant guilty. On the other hand, if you're not convinced that one or more of these elements has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. Number 36, jury unanimity for obstruction of justice and the verdict form for count 3. Count 3 charges Tracey Marie Grist with obstruction of justice. The prosecution argues that the defendant may have committed the offense by 1, being a party to planting the knife in Matthew Rastelli's hand, and or 2, making an untruthful statement to 911 or the police that Matthew Rastelli had a knife before Kevin Ellis shot Matthew Rastelli. You may not find Tracey Marie Grist guilty on this account unless you unanimously agree that the prosecution has proven that Tracey Marie Grist committed obstruction of justice in at least one of these specific ways, and you unanimously agree on the specific way in which the defendant committed the offense. If you find Tracey Marie Grist guilty of obstruction of justice, you must record on the verdict form which way or ways you unanimously agree she committed the offense. 37. Elements of the crime charged. Count 4, commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child. The defendant, Tracey Marie Grist, is charged in count 4 with committing to commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child. You cannot convict her of this offense unless, based on the evidence you find beyond a reasonable doubt, each of the following elements. 1. Tracey Marie Grist as a party to the offense. 2. Intentionally or knowingly committed murder. 3. In the presence of a child. And 4. Tracey Marie Grist and Matthew Rastelli were cohabitants at the time of the offense. After you carefully consider all the evidence in this case, if you're convinced that each and every element has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant guilty. On the other hand, if you are not convinced that one or more of these elements has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. Number 38, element of the crimes charged, count 5, commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child. The defendant, Tracey Marie Grist, is charged in count 5 with committing commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child. You cannot convict her of this offense unless, based on the evidence, you find beyond a reasonable doubt each of the following elements. 1. Tracey Marie Grist as a party to the offense. 2. Intentionally or knowingly committed murder. 3. In the presence of a child. And 4. Tracey Marie Grist and Matthew Rastelli were cohabitants at the time of the offense. After you carefully consider all the evidence in this case, if you're convinced that each and every element has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant guilty. On the other hand, if you're not convinced that one or more of these elements has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, then you must find the defendant not guilty. Number 39, stipulation of fact regarding cohabitation. When lawyers agree that certain facts are true, it is called a stipulation of fact. You must accept any stipulated facts as having been proven. However, the significance of these facts, as with all facts, is for you to decide. The parties have stipulated that Tracey Marie Grist and Matthew Rastelli were cohabitants at the time of the offense. Number 40, definitions applicable to counts 4 and 5, commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child. Child means an individual younger than 18 years old. In the presence of a child. In the presence of a child means A, in the physical presence of a child, or B, having knowledge that the child is present and may see or hear an act of domestic violence. Cohabitant. Cohabitant, as used in this case, means an individual who is 16 years or older who, 1, is related by blood or marriage to the other party as the individual's parent, grandparent, sibling, or any other individual related to the individual by consanguinity or affinity to the second degree. As Instruction 39 provides, the parties have stipulated that Tracey Marie Grist and Matthew Rastelli were cohabitants at the time of the offense. Instruction number 41, special verdict form for cohabitation. If you determine beyond a reasonable doubt that Tracey Marie Grist committed either murder count 1, conspiracy to commit murder count 2, domestic violence in the presence of a child count 4, or domestic violence in the presence of a child count 5, you must complete the special verdict form titled Special Verdict Form for Cohabitant. Number 42, jury unanimity, multiple offenses with identical elements. The prosecution is charged in count 4 and count 5 that Tracey Marie Grist committed commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child multiple times. Although each of these counts has similar or identical elements, you must consider each count separately and render unanimous agreement on whether Tracey Marie Grist is guilty or not guilty of each individual count. You may not find the defendant guilty of any count unless you unanimously agree the prosecution has proven the specific act and the elements of the offense for each count, and you unanimously agree the prosecution has proven all other elements of the count. You may find the defendant guilty of all of these counts, none of these counts, only some of these counts, but for each count, your decision must be unanimous. In this case, count 4 is based on the alleged conduct of committing the offense in the presence of SR. Count 5 is based on the alleged conduct of committing the offense in the presence of CR. I'll now read to you the various verdict forms. In the 4th District Court, Provo, Utah County, State of Utah plaintiff versus Tracey Marie Grist, defendant. Verdict form for count 1, case number 2411-01170, Judge Roger W. Griffin. As to count 1, we, the jury, impaneled in the above entitled cause, find the defendant as to count 1, murder is charged in the information, blank guilty or blank not guilty. And then below that is a line with the jury foreperson. The jury foreperson will select the correct answer and then sign their name and put their juror number by their name. The next jury verdict form. In the 4th District Court, Provo, Utah County, Utah, State of Utah versus Tracey Marie Grist. Verdict form for count 2, case 2411-01170, Judge Roger W. Griffin. As to count 2, we, the jury, impaneled in the above entitled cause, find the defendant as to count 2, conspiracy to commit murder is charged in the information, blank guilty or blank not guilty. Then a signature line for the jury foreperson. Similarly, you should check the right box for the jury's decision, sign, and put your jury number next to your signature. The next verdict form. In the 4th District Court, Provo, Utah County, Utah, State of Utah versus Tracey Marie Grist, defendant. Verdict form for count 3, case number 2411-01170, Judge Roger W. Griffin. As to count 3, we, the jury, impaneled in the above entitled cause, find the defendant as to count 3, obstruction of justice, as charged in the information, blank guilty or blank not guilty. Further, having found the defendant guilty, we unanimously find, then you mark all that apply and leave blank if the defendant is found not guilty. Blank, Tracey Marie Grist was a party to planting the knife in Matthew Rastelli's hand. Tracey Marie Grist made an untruthful statement to 9/11 or the police that Matthew Rastelli had a knife before Kevin Ellis shot Matthew Rastelli, blank foreperson. Similarly, we'll check the right box, guilty or not guilty, and then after making that decision, you'll move down following the instructions and check a box as applicable or a line for the next section, and then sign and put your juror number. The next verdict forms for counts 4 and 5. In the 4th District Court, Provo, Utah County, State of Utah, plaintiff versus Tracey Marie Grist, defendant. Case number 2411-01170, Judge Roger Griffin. As to count 4, we, the jury, impaneled in the above entitled cause, find the defendant as to count 4, commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child as charged in the information, blank guilty, blank not guilty. As to count 5, we, the jury, impaneled in the above entitled cause, find the defendant as to count 5, commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child as charged in the information, blank guilty or blank not guilty. And then the signature line. Once again, the jury foreperson will select the correct answer for each count, then sign and put their juror number next to their signature. Then we have the special verdict form. In the 4th District Court, Provo, Utah County, State of Utah plaintiff versus Tracey Marie Grist, defendant. Special verdict form for cohabitation, case number 2411-01170, Judge Roger W. Griffin. As to count 1, 2, 4, or 5, we, the jury, impaneled in the above entitled cause, find at the time of the offenses in count 1, 2, 4, or 5 that Tracey Marie Grist and Matthew Rastelli were blank cohabitants or blank not cohabitants. Following the instructions, select the right answer, and the jury foreperson will sign and put their name and their jury number on that line. That concludes the final jury instructions. Mr. Pomeroy, I believe you have the state's closing.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's not already maybe published to the jury.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Just publishing the presentation to the jury.
Okay, thank you.
Is the audio good? Okay.
Yes.
Kevin Ellis pulled the trigger, but Tracey Grist killed Matthew Rostelli. The question isn't whether it was murder. The question is whether Tracey is tied to that murder. Under the law, a person is guilty of a crime if she intentionally helps bring it about, if she solicits it, if she encourages it, if she helps it to happen. She doesn't have to pull the trigger to be a murderer. So again, Kevin shot, but Tracey is a murderer. Fueled by her hate for Matthew, inspired by her interest in true crime, Tracey planned and executed a knockoff of the Donna Adelson conspiracy. After all, as Tracey herself put it, sometimes you have to color outside the lines. Now, in this conspiracy, Kate and her kids were the motive, Kevin was the means, and Tracey was the mastermind, the manipulator. Let's briefly address each of those three. Start with the motive. Kate was unhappy in her marriage. She viewed it as loveless. She had already moved on to other men. She wanted a divorce and custody of her kids. But when she ran away to Utah, a divorce attorney told her it wouldn't be so easy. As she put it in a text to her friend, she felt both hopeless and fucked. Tracey too gained a motive by this turn of events. Remember what Matt texted her after she convinced Kate to skip town on him. You infected Kate with the need to leave California. I will not forget your involvement in this. Enjoy your short time with them. You will not be welcome in our house again. If you don't text me the address where his children were, I will be calling the sheriff for kidnapping. Tracey not only hated Matt, but feared that if he remained in the picture, she would lose at least some level of access to her daughter and her grandchildren. Everyone understood that this was the final straw. So Tracey did what a lawyer could not. She copied an idea, a way out of the marriage with no California court, no sheriff, no shared custody, and no loose ends. It would kill Matthew. The means. Kevin's role in Tracey's plan was to shoot Matthew. He shot Matthew 7 times. 3 times in the back. Mere seconds after Matthew had come into the home, an expected and invited guest. Kevin and Tracey then waited 8 minutes after the shooting before calling 911. Time sufficient to make sure that Matthew was truly dead, time to plant the knife, time to stage the scene. During those 8 minutes, no one tried to give Matthew any life-saving aid. During those 8 minutes, Kevin said to be careful because Matthew might still be moving or kicking. And during those 8 minutes, as I said, the knife was planted. That gun used to kill Matthew, Tracey's. The knife planted in Matthew's hand, Tracey's. The manipulation. Tracey was the mastermind of this murder. She was at the gravitational center of this entire family. She was the one who got each and every family member to carry out their needed part. And certainly some of them did so unwittingly as to what Tracey's ultimate goal was. She was the connection between Kate and Kevin. You heard they didn't really have much of a relationship before Kate fled with the children to Utah. She was literally the voice in Kate's ear, telling Kate what to say when Kate was speaking on the phone to Diane, Matthew's mother. She dictated to Kate what Kate should say or text to Matthew as Kate was luring him to Utah and inside the home. And Tracey was metaphorically the voice on Kate's shoulder as she convinced her that this was the way out. She manipulated Kevin. She preyed on his protective instincts for Kate, but more importantly, his instincts for those 2 children. She pressured him into ambushing, shooting, and killing Matthew. So she manipulated Rachel to get Rory and Jake out of the house so they wouldn't be witnesses. She manipulated Rachel to be the lookout, feed updates as Matt drove to Utah. Remember the messages Rachel sent both Kevin and Tracey just a few minutes before the murder? forum, Find My. She was also the one who had Rachel tell Tim he wouldn't be needed that night. Why not? Because the plan Tim knew about, just to be the peacemaker, to be a presence during a conversation, that had changed. Tim wouldn't be needed to keep the peace because Tracey didn't need him to keep the peace. She didn't want him to keep the peace. She intended for Kevin to shoot Matthew, and the fewer witnesses, the better. And Tracey worked with Tara Lynn to help plant a false story of reconciliation in their text messages, presumably for the police to find. You saw Kate testify. She may have wanted Matthew out of the picture. We can be real. We can use our common sense. It was obvious that Kate was not capable of planning or carrying out this murdering conspiracy by herself. You heard Kevin's word. Whose idea was this? Tracey's idea. At the beginning of this trial, my colleague asked you to follow the evidence. Not what he said, not what opposing counsel said, not what I say, but what the evidence says. He asked you to consider several questions as you sat throughout this trial. Did Tracey Grist cause the death of Matthew Rosselli? Did Tracey agree with Catherine and or Kevin to kill Matthew? Did Tracey help plant the knife or plant the knife? In a moment, we will review the evidence together to see what answers it gives us to these questions. But first, I want to review just a few of the instructions Judge Griffin just gave you, because the law he gave you will help you determine which narrative is letting the facts speak for themselves and which narrative is distorting the facts to fit a story that does not reflect the reality of what happened. Jury instruction 10 is the reasonable doubt instruction. I want to call your attention to just a few passages in each of these instructions. There are very few things in this world that we know with absolute certainty. And in criminal cases, the law does not require proof that overcomes every possible doubt. You just need to be firmly convinced. And if I say anything in this closing argument that makes it seem I'm undercutting that, I'm not. If I say anything, a slip of a tongue that makes it seem like I'm shifting the burden to the defendant, I am not. She has no burden. The state has the burden. But be clear on what the burden is. You only have to be firmly convinced, not a shadow of a doubt or some other standard. What is evidence? Evidence includes what the witnesses said while testifying under oath, and any exhibits admitted into evidence as noted, the lawyer's statements, the arguments, those are not evidence. But this is important. This is what I want to draw your attention to. You may draw all reasonable inferences from that evidence. And there are many reasonable inferences for you to draw in this case. You may ask, is some evidence better than other evidence? Facts may be proved by direct evidence or circumstantial evidence. The law does not treat any one type of evidence better than the other. It's for you to apply your judgment and common sense on how you wish to weigh the evidence. Similarly, how do you decide if a witness is credible? I obviously couldn't put the entire instruction on here, but the key passages: use your judgment and common sense. You may consider anything that you think is important in weighing the credibility of witnesses. And this is key. You may believe all, part, or none of a witness's testimony. With at least two witnesses, there are reasons to believe only parts of what they told you. We'll come back to that. Now, what must be proven? Now, this is just a summary. When we get to it, when you get to the deliberation and later in the argument we discuss it, use the actual instructions. This is just a summary to help us for the moment. I want to call your attention to the four different charges. One of them, domestic violence in the presence of a child, there's two counts for each of the two children. But you'll notice that murder, as a party to the offense, did Tracey Grist cause the death of Matthew? Obstruction, as a party to the offense, did Tracey plant the knife or make an untruthful statement to police or 911? Domestic violence in the presence of a child, as a party to the offense, did Tracey Grist commit the murder in the presence of the children? And then conspiracy is slightly different. Tracey Grist, intending that the crime be performed, agreed with one or more persons to engage or cause the performance. Three of these charges have that language as a party to the offense. And that's important to look at for a moment. What does that mean? How can you be a party to the offense? If she has the mental state required for the offense, that's something the instruction will tell you a little bit more about in a moment. If she directly commits it, or if she solicits it, or requests it, or commands it, or encourages it, or intentionally aids it, she's just as guilty as the person who actually did it. So if she solicited, requested, commanded, encouraged, or aided Kevin in shooting Matthew, she's guilty of murder. Same for the obstruction, and the same for the domestic violence in the presence of a child. Now, with this law in mind, I want to review the facts together with you. And in these facts, we will see as surely as the day is long that Tracey Grist is not just a party to the offense, but the key party to the offenses of murder and obstruction and conspiracy and domestic violence in the presence of a child. Now, we admitted a lot of exhibits in this case, a substantial amount. And this is just the documentary evidence, not to mention the videos, not to mention the audio. And I thank you in advance for your patience as we go through some of that. We don't have time to go through all of that. You can choose in your deliberations to go through all of it. I want to highlight the key points for you. Let's turn to the evidence. We begin with a more in-depth look at the development of the motive and origins of this conspiracy. Now, as you've heard, Matthew and Kate married in 2016, and they lived in California. They certainly had their issues. It's called a toxic relationship during trial. Regardless, by early 2024, that relationship was strained. Kate was unhappy. She viewed it as loveless. She had already had an affair, or as she called it, stepping out on the marriage. And that was a point of conflict between her and Matthew. You saw the evidence. In January 2024, Kate confided to her mother that she wanted out of the marriage. They've been fighting so much. I want out. By May, texts between Kate and Tracey again reflect continued frustration and unhappiness. I hate my life. Hate that I have kids with Matt. This is so bad. I hate him so much. Ultimately, Kate was unhappy enough to separate from Matthew, essentially disappearing without warning on June 20th, 2024. She took their two young children to live at her mother's house, Tracey, in American Fork, Utah, driving the rental car that Tracey paid for and arranged for her to have. After Kate came to Utah, she and the Grist family learned that separating from Matthew and getting custody of the children wouldn't be very clear-cut. It would be very difficult. The biggest problem was that California still had legal jurisdiction over the children and the marriage. You heard Kate's recorded conversation with the lawyer that she shared with the family, where she learned the reality of their situation. As Kate summarized to her friend, honestly, I'm fucked. Just dumb California law. I just feel hopeless. So the evidence is clear about the development of Kate's motive. But in the evidence, we can also see the development of Tracey's motive and thoughts in parallel to Kate. In January, when Kate confided to her mother that she wanted out of the marriage that they'd been fighting, how did Tracey respond? She called Matt. She threatened him, even though, as she puts it, she was just watering down her words. And then Kate said, "Don't call him." And she replied that she wouldn't. "I'll just drive 9 hours and strangle him. Fuck him." By May, Kate had again confided that she hates her life. This was May 22nd. And the next day, Tracey searches the web for mountain lion. Searches the web for this. What scent attracts mountain lions to human? Tracey says, this is just a joke. I don't know about you. I've never had Google laugh at one of my searches before. This was for her and her alone. That same day, Tracey flew to California for a short visit to attend her friend Amy's celebration of life. She returned home on May 30th, and then shortly thereafter, she starts days of texts and searches that aren't just coincidence, but rather show what Tracey thinks of Matthew and what's on her mind at this point in time. So on June 4th, around 6:02 p.m., Tracey reaches out to her daughter, Tara Lynn. Can you talk? So mad at Matt. So mad. The next morning, we have this exchange where Kate calls Matt a piece of shit because of that issue with the camper trailer. And Tracey says, he's lying. And then a little bit later that day, tells Rachel, Matt made it so I want to kill him. When Katie asked about whatever I had said about her being the camper too much, which I never said anything, he straight up lied. I'm gonna kill him. And then by the evening of June 6th, and the next morning, June 7th, she searches more. She searches more about the Donna Adelson murder conspiracy. She searches Katie Magbanwa pictures, Katie Magbanwa, Catherine Magbanwa attorney, Katie Magbanwa's second trial defense charts. You may remember that Katie was the middleman in the Donna Adelson conspiracy to murder her son-in-law. She also searches, how old were Dan Markle's kids when Dan was killed? Dan was Donna's son-in-law, who she murdered through the use of a hitman. Or we could use the defense's statements from opening, where he said, it's just a guy who got murdered by another guy. It was a messy deal. Also a conspiracy. What these texts, internet searches, and verbal conversations show is that Tracey returned again and again over time to her contempt for Matthew and the idea of killing him. Look, we need to be clear about at least one thing here. Offhanded comments and Google searches alone do not prove guilt. Back in January, the murder wasn't in play yet. But when you see the comments continue, when you see the comments followed by research, the research followed by planning, the planning followed by an execution of the plan followed by a cover-up, it tells you what was on her mind and that you know exactly what her intent was. You heard Tracey say it herself. I searched what was on my mind. And Matthew's death was on her mind. Moreover, Tracey's feelings influenced the entire family. Let's take one example. On June 16th, this is where Tara Lynn and Rachel have a conversation. Tara Lynn, referring to her husband, asking Rachel, he wants to know if you shot your .380 yet. Rachel says, no. Unfortunately, kids make it hard to get out and go shooting. Ha ha. We need to coordinate with mom and take it out before any chance of Matt coming. LOL. There's a phrase called kidding on the square. I don't know if you've heard it before. It's a communication style where it allows someone to convey a sincere opinion under the guise of humor. It can give you plausible deniability. I was just kidding. I was just joking about what I said. But what such joking does when it's repeated time and time again is to normalize violence. It desensitized the family to the idea of killing Matt. It dehumanized Matthew that they routinely joked about killing him. It takes a lot to kill another person. Normalizing, desensitizing, dehumanizing, good first steps to get there. Some of it surely started as a joke. That's gotta be the truth. That common sense tells you that. It turns out to be a lot less funny when a few minutes later, someone turns up dead. With this understanding of Tracey's mindset towards Matthew, consider what happened once it was decided that Kate would leave Matthew and come to Utah. So on June 16th, the arrangements were made for Kate to come to Utah. Tracey got her on the credit card, they made the bedroom plan, et cetera, et cetera. At nearly exactly the same time, Tracey makes the following search. Utah, shoot, break in. She said, the autocorrect must have spelt it wrongly. Use your common sense. Autocorrect doesn't fill in misspellings. This was an intentional search by Tracey. And then a few hours later, she searches how to file for a divorce, how to establish Utah residency. On the 20th, Kate then came to Utah. And as a result of her coming to Utah, we have the final text conversations between Matthew and Tracey. The ones where Matt texted Tracey after she helped Kate skip town on him. These statements, the ones where he says that you infected Kate, the one where he says enjoy your short time with them, the one where he threatens to call the sheriff for kidnapping. And we can see as a result of this exchange exactly how Tracey became concerned about what had happened, about what she had done, about the legal implications of bringing Kate and the children to Utah. For what we will see is not a temporary breather, but a permanent break. Because the next morning on June 22nd, she makes 16 searches related to child custody, the legal implications, and parental kidnapping. Now, what did Tracey learn from all these web searches? We can infer, remember the instructions, you can make reasonable inferences from the evidence, that she learned exactly what the lawyer told Kate on July 11th. California still had jurisdiction for the divorce, jurisdiction for child custody, and there was no way Kate was going to get sole custody of the kids in Utah. And now, at this point, after that, Kate had very real reason to fear losing at least some access to her daughter and her grandchildren. There was the lawyer call on July 11th at 3:29 p.m. Lasted approximately 31 minutes. What did Tracey search at 4:39 p.m.? When was Donna Adelson arrested? So approximately 40 minutes after the lawyer call ended, Tracey is researching how long it took Donna Adelson to be arrested for getting rid of her inconvenient son-in-law by murdering him during a custody dispute. Is it a coincidence? If you still have any lingering doubt that Tracey didn't know exactly what was going on with the lawyer or wasn't controlling absolutely everything and everyone in this family, remember her conversation with Tara Lynn from before the lawyer meeting. Tara, call Kate, help her with what to say to the lawyer. She's happy about not going back, and she needs to take legal steps now. School starts soonish, July 1st. Does this sound temporary to you? Tracey knows Kate isn't going back, even if she testified otherwise. She directs both Tara and Kate on what to do. And let's be real, kids don't need to be registered for school in Utah if they're going home to California. What else Tracey say? The next day, I'll listen to the lawyer call and report. So what do we know? We know in Tracey's own words that she had contempt for Matt, hated Matt, disliked Matt. Use your adjective of choice. We know in her own words that she stewed over his supposed lies. We know in her own words that she repeatedly joked. She discussed killing him, harming him. We know in her own words that she was well acquainted with murder conspiracies. We know in her own words that she was researching about shooting intruders. We know in her own words, after Matthew threatened to call the sheriff over kidnapping, that she was concerned about parental kidnapping and the legal implications. And we know the lawyer told the family that this wasn't a legal battle they were going to win. Was their initial plan for this family, for Kate, to pursue a divorce? Yes, that was the initial plan. But by this point, by July 11th, the backup plan took priority for Tracey, Kate, and Kevin. A way out. But that way out was to get Matthew out of the picture permanently. I want to remind you of one more thing on this point before we move on. Kate testified that the conspiracy first came together about a week to a week and a half after she got to Utah on the 20th. You should believe Kate to the extent you can corroborate Kate. We can corroborate this point at least. The Tara Kate messages were July 11th, a little bit more than a week and a half. What do we have here? On June 21st, Tracey told Kevin about the sheriff and the kidnapping issue, forwarded the message, and how did Kevin respond? How about no? They're not worried about Kevin. Sorry, they're not worried about Matt. On the 26th, Kate texts Kevin, what day are you coming back? Wondering for Olaf, nickname for Matt. If I have to rush back, I can make that happen. June 29th, that week to week and a half. What did Tracey tell her sister and her brother? I want him to show up. he still thinks it's only for another week. And of course she wanted him to show up. You can't remove Matt from the equation if he's not there. In the end, whatever the exact moment was that the plan came together, whatever the exact moment the agreement was made, after the afternoon of July 11th, the die were cast. The loose strands of Tracey's ill will towards Matt, the lingering thoughts of harming him, the inspiration from another murder case, were woven together in that final day and a half into a conspiracy that culminated when Kevin shot Matthew. And if you believe at any point in time, whether it was an hour, a day, or a month before the murder, that there was an agreement, that is conspiracy, and Tracey is guilty of the conspiracy and the murder. Now, to be sure, this was a poorly executed conspiracy with an even worse cover-up, what the defense called the messiest conspiracy. But a messy conspiracy is a conspiracy nonetheless. So now we are going to move to the execution of the conspiracy and its unraveling. The evidence of it, at least in retrospect, can be broken down into 4 phases. And so that's how I'll break it down for you today. They had to lure Matthew to Utah. They had to funnel him or get him inside Tracey's home. They had to ambush him and cover it up. So phase 1, luring Matt to Utah. We've already acknowledged this. For this to work, Matt has to come to Utah. But we also know Matt doesn't want to drive out to Utah. Kate had come to Utah under that guise of the temporary breather. Matt wanted Kate and the kids to come home to California and tried to assist Kate in coming without him traveling too. Matt, as you can see in these exhibits, this is what this is talking about, had arranged for the rental car and given her $600 so she could rent the car and drive back to California. So this was on the 11th that Matt had actually taken these steps for Kate to come to him and not vice versa. But then Kate and Tracey worked together to create excuses as to why Kate couldn't drive to California and Matt had to come to Utah. They came up with at least 2 ruses that we know about, the sprained ankle ruse and the can't rent the car ruse, right? And so you can see on here the development, or not necessarily the development, but the evidence of the spraining of the ankle ruse. There's a discussion about the car rental and what does mama say? Plus, you're gonna sprain that ankle. And you saw in evidence, and you can review more fully if you wish, the entire text exchange talking about this supposed sprained ankle, about how they're gonna go to the DI and get crutches and so on and so forth. And then, again, later on, the can't drive with that angle comment. And further, the excuse of not being able to do it because of the out-of-state driver's license and credit card versus debit card issue. Throughout these messages, you can see that Tracey is in control of this, not Kate. Tracey is directing this show. At Tracey's direction, not only did Kate convince Matt to drive to Utah, but she convinced him to drive the truck with the air tag in it. You heard a phone call in which Matt expressed concern about the truck breaking down and wanting to borrow the car, but Kate was insistent he had to drive the truck. We'll come back to that in a second. That was exhibit 13, around 10 minutes long, so I won't play the entire thing right now. But there's several quotes in there. One of them was, "You can't just roll the dice with the truck," several times. That Kate comes back and back, urging Matt to take the truck. And you know why, because the air tag that had been hidden inside the truck in the bin under the pile of trash. One Matthew didn't know was there, partially because of the trash and partially because he had the Android phone and wouldn't see it. Now, Tracey, Kevin, Rachel, and Tara Lynn, unlike Matt, could and did track the air tag, including when Matthew came to Utah. We'll just go over a few examples, right? Okay, so here is Tara Lynn telling Kate to hide the air tag in the truck. Then we see the group message that was created between Tracey, Kate, Tara Lynn, and Rachel, where they're all tracking Matthew. Comments are made during this discussion, but you might break down the desert, ha 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 ha, at least we can watch it. Don't watch it because they can track it. And that was Tara Lynn saying that. Rachel responds, at least we'll be able to track the truck as long as the air tag stays there. We have elsewhere, a few days later, Kevin tracking Matt, telling Kate, hey, the tag is still active. And here's a screenshot of his current location. Even Kelly, Tracey's sister, knows that she's tracking Matt. Have you been getting hits from the air tag in the truck? You can infer Tracey told her about it. Despite Kate convincing Matt to drive to Utah in this trackable truck, there was another problem. Matt was reluctant to come inside the house. There was a few reasons for this. One, he didn't want to turn off the truck because of the whole starter issue and the concern of would it turn back on. But the evidence also shows it was just because of what his purpose was. He just wanted to pick up the kids, get his little family, get him in the truck, and go home to California. Turn the volume, it looks like it may not have been turned up.
Yeah, what's going on?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. What's going on?
I just called to see how your drive is going.
I'm just passing that abandoned water park.
Oh, fun. Cool.
Yeah, I just like ran out looking at it.
Yeah. My mom said if you're too tired, when you get here, that you can always sleep here. She said she'll keep her distance. She'll actually be asleep.
Oh my gosh, I'm just not gonna talk. That's all.
Okay. Or if we want, we can get a hotel. She said she'll give us $100 towards it.
No, it's not like that. I just wanna see my baby, see you. I brought my pillow and everything else.
Right.
So I'm really worried about it. So, well, but what do you want to do?
I want you to be comfortable.
I will be. I just become
Okay.
once I have my family.
Okay. Well, good.
All I
Okay,
want.
awesome.
Yeah. So cool. I'll just keep
Awesome.
trucking along here.
The morning started with these text messages. Good morning, getting up and getting moving. Exciting for today. That's what Kate told him. He responds, I'm over the moon. Can't wait to hug and kiss you all. You have other phone calls in the record that you can listen to from the morning. That last phone call you just heard was at 2:20 in the afternoon. There's another one around 8:15 p.m. You can listen to all of them if you want. You'll notice Matt's not agitated. Matt's excited about seeing his family, seeing his baby, going home. Completely different than the testimony you heard from Tracey, that he was agitated, and that explains what happened. That's not what explains what happened. Anyways, Matthew didn't want to go in Tracey's home. He didn't want that confrontation. He didn't want to turn off the car as we discussed. He just wanted to load quickly and go home. The starter was an issue, but Matt also knew what the state of his relationship was with Tracey. He knew they didn't get along. He knew they each knew what the other thought of the other. So, we have these messages clearly show how he feels. We've seen the messages from Tracey that clearly shows how she feels. Despite this, Kate repeatedly reassured Matt throughout the drive. She gave him the gate code. She told him the doors were unlocked. She put that cardboard out. She said she just heard Tracey would be asleep. One of the phone calls, she told him, just come right on in. The door is always unlocked. And Tracey was actually involved in these reassurances. We see that in the evidence. Here's just one example of it. Tell Matt, I'll stay away. And I'll be as sweet as candy. Tracey, who had for months belittled Matthew, for months threatened to kill him in these so-called jokes, made a threat to him over the phone, said fuck him, belittled him, said he didn't have the balls to do anything. Tracey, who had gotten Kate away from Matthew, is now encouraging Matthew to come inside the home without knocking, without hesitation. What's common sense tell you about that? Meanwhile, when this is all happening, the family is monitoring the AirTag. Now, you heard Rachel testify that she watched it at least 5 times that day. Tara Lynn and Rachel knew about it. Here is Rachel texting Tara Lynn a screenshot of Matt's location, to which Tara Lynn replies with an expletive, that's pretty far up We know Tracey was doing the same. Here's the text from Tracey to Kate with that same Apple AirTag that was being used to track them. Now, July 12th was a hive of activity amongst the family as preparations were made for his arrival. Throughout the day of the shooting, the family exchanged phone calls and messages, many of which discussed Matt. We have reconstructed for this presentation a timeline sourced entirely from the evidence in the trial of what all these people were doing on July 12th before Matthew's arrival. Now, I'm going to give you a note up front. This is a demonstrative. This has not been admitted into evidence. You don't get it during deliberations. So feel free to take any notes that you would like from this to cross-check those exhibits on what stands out to you. Now we have a little key. There's persons involved. Matt will be highlighted in this light purple color, Kate in yellow, Tracey in red, Tara Lynn in green, Rachel in blue, Kevin in orange. Aurora, Jake, and Tim don't appear very frequently, so they're just still in white. You'll understand it. And then the communication types also get colored. Text messages in black, phone calls in purple, Facebook Messenger, whether that be a text or a call, is in blue, and web searches are in green. At the top, you'll see the time, you'll see the sender, you'll see the receiver, you'll see the message or a description of what it was, you'll see the duration or an indication that it was a text message, and you'll see a note to the exhibit number, because like I said, these are pulled from the exhibits. Feel free to refer to them during deliberations, should you so choose. So it starts out, good morning, Exhibit 8. We've already been over that text exchange. And then Tracey and Kate have this discussion about the rental car. Darn that rental place for not taking a debit card. Kate, I have to be more upset. Then they have a continued discussion about that. And then what was found on Kate's device, the audio recording that occurred sometime between 7:57 and 8:04. The recording where she goes up to Kevin saying she needs to go make her story more believable or plausible, and that the kids know that she is upstairs. Kate then has a phone call with Tracey, then a phone call with Matt, and then we have some back and forth phone calls. Kate, Tracey, Kate, Matt, Tracey, Tara Lynn, Kate, Kate, Tara Lynn. At this point, we have 3 phone calls between Kate and Matthew where she is convincing him to come out to Utah. The first one, that's the one where you can't roll the dice. You heard the segment of. Go back and listen to the entire thing. The second one, Matt says he's not going to borrow a car. And by the third one, Matt says that he got the permit. He's going to be able to drive the truck out. And then right after that, Kate texts Tracey. He's going to drive out. So the plan worked. Matt's coming to Utah. And then what happens? Kate calls Tara Lynn. Tara Lynn calls Rachel. Rachel texts Tracey. Tara Lynn calls Rachel. Tracey texts Kate. I'll call you. Then Tracey, a little bit later, does call Tracey. Have you ever seen the third Lord of the Rings movie, Return of the King? Or is that one scene where they light the beacon tower and it just goes down the chain and each one gets lit in a row? That is exactly what's happening here. At least on this day, everyone in the family that's involved in these conversations knows what is going on with Kate and Matthew. And then we have that text message we already looked at where Tracey shows the AirTag location. And then we have a phone call between Matt and Kate where Kate confirms that Matthew is coming inside.
Yeah, probably just pull right up in front of the house, you know?
Yeah, I want to slow it up. How long are you going to take? Like 15 minutes to load up?
Yeah, not long at all.
Yeah, I'm not trying to rush you. I just don't
No.
want to risk the truck. That's all, you know?
No, I get it.
Yeah.
You gonna come inside? Are you gonna come inside and help me load up?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The front door is always unlocked, okay?
So that entire call is about 11 minutes, Exhibit 16. There's more to it. Those are some highlights. Then we get to lunchtime. We again have a flurry of calls back and forth. Or I guess I should say messages. Some of these are Facebook, some of these are phone calls, some of these are written communications. We see that Rachel sends the image of Matthew's AirTag. Carolyn, that's where she says that's pretty far up there. And then again, we have some flurry of overlapping phone calls and messages between Kate and Tracey and Rachel and Tara Lynn. And then right at the end of this back and forth, you'll see at 12:58, there's a phone call between Tracey and Kate while on the phone with Rachel. We're not sure if that's a three-way or if Rachel's put on hold at this point. And then there's a call between Rachel and Tara Lynn, and then a messenger between Tara Lynn and Rachel. But then what do we see? Tracey and Tara Lynn have a phone call that lasts 3 hours and 56 minutes. Then they have a phone call through the Facebook app for 30 minutes and 30 seconds. And then immediately after that, over 30 minutes of communication, they have a text exchange. And I submit to you that this text exchange is completely out of place to the tenor of everything else. In this text message, they continue going on about how happy they are that Kate is going back. I was calling to let you know that Matt is headed out. She already knew by that point. To pick up Katie and the kiddos. Your phone is kind of annoying because I came and have a normal conversation with you. She's going to try to make it work and be a positive experience. I told her I'm a little nervous. Heart emoji to Tracey's first message. I know he's trying, but I'm nervous and trepidation for sure. I support her completely. I really need you to support her because she is on the fence and she needs our love and support to do so for the kiddos. Tracey continues, my only prayer today is he's peaceful and continues to be peaceful. With her, nachos, but she corrects it. Sorry, the month to months, so I'll read it corrected. With her, not just on the drive back from California, but also in the months to come, so not just. And then Tara Lynn responds, from what Kate was telling me, it sounds like he's gotten sober and is really trying. I'm still worried about his temper. I'm still hoping that he's really had a change of heart in the last couple of weeks. I'll definitely try to be supportive. It does make me nervous though, because he says one thing and then he just does another. Submitting to throughout all of this, it's not Matt who said one thing and did another. Tracey, I love you. Tara Lynn, I know that them working this out would be the best for everybody, and I will support her no matter what. Sorry my reception is so crappy. I would have loved to have this conversation with you on the phone, just on the phone for nearly 35 minutes. Tracey, I love you, and all I care about is that she is happy and that the kids are happy, and I feel like her giving this another chance, especially after she came out for some time to think. It continues. The hardest part, they continue this another page or two. Tracey discussed about how she would just stay out of the way unless Matt wants to come in and say hi. I'll give them space. I feel like Matt is not happy with me, and I'll let Katie stay with us. So I'll be fine. As time goes on, I'll be fine. Probably for the best, and so on and so on. Discussion of marriage counseling. The excitement of seeing his family will be just all he's thinking about. Same. Oh gosh, don't say that, Tracey says. If he stews on the whole drive, that would not be good. I pray to God he's only excited to hug those babies. 100%, Tracey says to that. Tracey continues, hey there, I need to focus, so I love you, and I'll talk to you later. And I do not like that. Your phone is ridiculous right now. But I can't imagine how you might be feeling about that dang phone. You probably want to throw it across the room. Tara Lynn, I know, I feel like you only want to see the good side of things sometimes. And I hope that you're right about that things go well. For real, I'll let you work. But thank you for taking the time to text with me. I feel so isolated with my reception being so expletive. We know she's free to use expletives in so many other communications. She edited this one for some reason. Yet one more reason to show this is a ruse, this is planted. Does anyone really believe this? This is completely incredulous. Here's another one that we know that they knew that Kate wasn't going back. Tell everyone not to engage with Matt. There won't be us after this deceptive mood. Great. That's kind of the plan, dude. That's kind of the plan, dude. There won't be us after this. Any event, after that additional ruse, Tracey and Kevin, quick phone call, they're meeting for sushi. Tracey immediately starts planting messages with Kate. What happened since the previous day? Why is she excited now about this? Well, they're excited because they lured Matt out to Utah. He's going to come in the house. So while Tracey is putting up this farce, Kate is relating information to Matthew. Tracey, you see right there at 2:13 p.m., searches the "It's Happening" meme. What's happening? Why is she so excited? And well, again, Tracey is putting up this farce. Rachel is clearing the house. You can see that she calls Jake, she calls Tim, she calls Aurora, she calls them all off. Rachel and Jake live there, so just make sure they're not there. Tim, who was going to come over, hear his testimony, he was told not to come. And then we continue to see phone calls throughout the afternoon being exchanged, some of them missed, some of them connected. But what's most important is that Kate and Tracey continued the ruse of Kate going back to California and those messages to Matt. You heard about preparations, you heard differing reasons for the preparations, but we do agree that the children's toys were cleaned up and placed in another room. You see in the photos that the blanket was placed on the couch right next to where Matt was shot. And also during all these preparations, the family monitored Matt's location. Kate consistently told Matt that she loves him. She was excited, even though we know she had no intent to leave. Her bags were not packed. She's not leaving on a jet plane. Not going to get in that car with him. And then at least 3 times in this last phone call at 8:13, Kate confirms, "You're going to come right in though." That's exhibit 18. And then Kate sends him the gate code. And then at 10:01 p.m., just minutes before Matt's arrival, Rachel texted Tracey and then Kevin and told them to look at the air tag as Matt passed through Orem. So who's the first person she sent it to? Tracey. Who's the second person she sends it to? Kevin. But who is noticeably absent? Who does she not send it to? Kate. Kate, the one the family is supposedly worried about, the one who has an Android device, and so can only access it through the family or one of her kids' iPads, the one we're supposedly worried about if Matthew is truly dangerous, she's the only one left out of the loop. Now finally, one last point.
You called me.
Skip the wrong way. One last point before we move on. We color-coded this for you. And I'm going to go back to the beginning. You'll see that Tracey is in red. There it is. Here's the beginning. Tracey's in red. There she is. There she is. There she is. There she is. There she is again. Tracey. Tracey everywhere. More Tracey. She is everywhere because she is everywhere. Tracey is the hub in the middle, and her children are the spokes. She's the mission control. She's orchestrating the entire plot. She agreed with Kate to have Kate, lure Matthew to Utah and come inside the house. She agreed with Kevin to have him lie in wait and shoot. And then she had Rachel get Rory and Jake out of the house and call Tim up and track Matt's location. She had Tara Lynn help her plant a duplicitous story about being happy with Kate going back with Matthew, but also that Matthew might be stewing all day, so be careful. A story that no one should believe at this point. So how do you know she manipulated everyone? Because just look at what she says and then what everyone does. Look at her involvement and look at the results. You know what one of the worst parts of this is? It's that she didn't just deceive Matthew. She deceived some of her own children into doing her bidding without them ever realizing what was truly happening.
You called me.
We're going to move on to the ambush, the phase 3 as I divided this. So at 10:01 p.m., Matthew was in Orem. Within minutes, he arrived in American Fork. Just before 10:06, Matthew entered the gated community. Inside Tracey's home, Kate was upstairs with the children. Tracey waited in the kitchen, and Kevin had put on a holster and Tracey's gun in preparation for Matthew's arrival. Now, there's really no other explanation for why he'd have the gun and holster on. 10 o'clock at night, inside his own home, safe, gated community. The explanation that you should infer is he intended to use it, and that's why he had it on under those circumstances. And having been called off or sent away, no one else besides the two youngest children asleep upstairs were in the home. At 10:06 p.m., the neighbor's security camera recorded Matt's truck pulling up to Tracey and Kevin's home. It took around 30 seconds to park. The video at least lasts 30 seconds, and you see him at least stopping by the end of it. Then he gets out and goes in. At 10:07 p.m., there's the parked truck. At 10:07 p.m., within mere seconds of his entry, neighbors said they heard the gunshots from the home. Now, when you look and analyze the physical, the forensic, and the medical evidence all together, it shows you what happened. So as shown in this slide, which I already had up, Matthew took over a little 30 seconds to stop. He left his hazard lights on when he got out. He carefully parked over the cardboard, took a few moments, whatever time he needed, and then proceeded inside. He walked to the front door and entered the home as he was told to. Remember, the door is always unlocked. The screen had been removed. And he took off his sandals right inside the front door as a good guest does. And then we can see from the Faro scan that immediately or within seconds of Matt's entry, Kevin began shooting. Matthew tried to flee down that hallway to the left. That makes sense because the evidence shows Kevin must have been standing to his right based off bullet casings, bullet trajectory, and all the other scene evidence put together, not any one individual thing. Now, unfortunately, Matthew didn't make it far. You can see with the black redacted box where Matthew fell after being shot in the chest, the side, the wrist, and the back 3 times while he moved away from the door towards the hall, landing that 10 or 15 feet from where he left his sandals. Now we're going to come back to that aspect in a moment and where Matthew fell. But for now, just remember what the crime scene expert, he pointed out where Kevin would have been based off the totality of the circumstances. Casings, the bullets, the trajectories, and all that. And from his testimony, you may reasonably infer that this was an ambush. 10:06, you saw it on the video, 30 seconds, more time to get to the door, 10:07 shots fired. There wouldn't have been enough time for Kevin to run around to that garage and get that gun from the safe. There would not have been enough time for Matthew to walk around as it was described in some of the testimony. It was immediate or near immediate ambush. And that's the result. At 10:08 p.m., the neighbors who had heard the shots texted Tracey and asked if they were okay. At 10:09, no response. They called 911. Now, around this time, Kate, who had stayed upstairs with the kids, overheard Kevin say something to the effect to be careful because he, being Matthew, might still be moving. Interestingly enough, that's one of the few things that Kate said that didn't have some form of independent or external corroboration until Tracey took the witness stand and said the same thing. So at least that part was true from her testimony. Tracey did not call 911 until more than 8 minutes after the shooting, 6 minutes after the neighbor had called. And by that time, police had already been dispatched and arrived 2 minutes into Tracey's call. Notice when they arrived, the lights were still off. No one in this 8 minutes turned on the lights. They were expecting him and didn't have the lights on awaiting him. Like I said, it was a bad cover-up to a bad conspiracy. We'll come back to that. In that 911 call, Tracey described Matt as armed with a knife, even though when she testified yesterday, she couldn't remember seeing the knife. To police who arrived, Kevin's first words were, "That guy had a knife and I was true." These statements were not true. Matthew was not armed. He was not an intruder. Remember, he was invited He was expected. He'd been tracked. The cardboard was out. He's given the gate code, specifically told to come in. Walk right in because Tracey would be asleep. But she wasn't. And he did to his death. This brings us to the cover-up, the obstruction, perhaps a better way to put that. First, there's the knife. Okay. As known in a 911 call, Tracey said Matthew had a knife. And then when police arrived, Kevin claimed Matthew had the knife. At the police station, Kevin reiterated Matthew had a knife. Tracey said the same thing at her interview at the police station. Hours later to the neighbor, Tracey also said Matthew had a knife. That's the story. A knife, as you can see, was found in Matthew's hand, but that knife was planted. There are numerous pieces of physical and forensic evidence that show this to be the case. Let's start with the photo. Just to start with common sense. Does that look like that knife in these conditions was planted? Or that he'd been holding it all along? Now, as you consider that, consider this evidence. That knife is in the wrong hand. Matthew was left-handed. That knife is in his right hand. Second, the knife is in the wrong position. It's backwards in the wrong hand. So the blade is facing inward, and the spine of the knife is facing the fingers, with the finger grip facing the palm. Get that, please. So what I have here is not the actual knife. The actual knife is in that exhibit box. Remember, we showed it to you. You maybe saw the zip ties. So this evidence had DNA testing. You can't touch that. You can see it if you'd like. So we have brought in a demonstrative. This is you could call it a replica if you want. You could call it a facsimile. It's just another copy of that knife. You can see what it is, a tactical knife. You can see back here the spine. You can see right here the finger grip. And you can see how someone would naturally hold this knife if they were going to use it. But you can also see from that photo, that's not how the knife is being held in his hand. It's being held 180 degrees backwards because it was planted in his hand. Consider the blood evidence that was discussed. There was the discussion of the blood pooling and the patterns. To be honest, the photos are somewhat graphic, and I'm not going to show all of them. You have all the ones that are admitted into evidence, and you can review it for yourself, but you can see enough here. There's blood pooling near his shoulder. There's no blood pooling under the arm, where that gunshot wound is. Blood is everywhere else, but where the arm and the wound is. And that tells you that arm had been moved. Then there's the medical evidence. Matthew had been shot through his arm near the wrist. We had a discussion where the gunshot wound perforated the skin, the tissue, the ulna bone, and the flexor muscles. Do you really think Matthew would still be holding that knife after being shot 7 times, 1 time in the wrist, running down that hallway away from Kevin, and falling face first on the ground? And fifth, we know that the knife belonged to Tracey. I've reiterated this, and I'll keep reiterating it. Believe Kate to the extent you can corroborate Kate. Okay? Now, Kate did testify. This is Tracey's knife. She told you where it was hidden in the laundry room. She told you that she saw it beforehand. And how can we corroborate this? Well, we know it's an unusual knife. The detective discussed local stores don't sell this. We saw where Tracey gained access to it. Her friend Amy's husband, Pierre, had passed away. They had been getting these tactical mystery boxes from My Tactical Promo. And that Tracey, by being in the home multiple times, taking care of her friend Amy, had access to it. We learned in testimony that Tracey's not above taking things from Amy. We talked about the titles, right? So she had access, and she does that in another circumstance. So you can infer that she did it in this circumstance. And we know from the Facebook posting by mytacticalpromo.com that it is that knife. And then there's the DNA evidence, where, there's a lot you can say about DNA, but what you can say is there's very strong support that the DNA on the knife belonged to Matthew and Catherine, or Matthew and Kevin, and Matthew or Tracey. Point of that is you may not know which of the Grist family members planted that knife based solely off the DNA, but you know it wasn't handled only by Matthew. And you know someone in that home put it in there. Okay. You also heard the expert's opinion that it was planted, right? Consider that for what it's worth. But you already know it from your common sense, from these factors that we just went over. That Matthew was not holding that knife when he was shot, and he was not holding that knife until Tracey and Kevin put it in his hands. At this point, I want to review a few of the instructions with you. I'm not going to put these on the slide. You're free to follow along. You have a copy of these. If you want to make notes, you can. You certainly don't have to. And I want to be certain of this, that you follow the exact language in these instructions. I'm just going to walk through a few of them, and we're going to start with inferring intent, right? Tracey left a lot of digital evidence that tells you what her intent is, but you still have to infer a little bit. And you have to infer a little bit about everybody else in the family and what their intent and motivation was. And that's what this instruction tells you can do. You seldom have direct statements, so you use the statements that you have, use the conduct that you have, the circumstances you have to see what the intent is. And then on instruction 30, we have the party liability, the party to the offense instruction that we went over earlier. And we already discussed this, that Tracey is guilty if she directly did any of these crimes, and Tracey is guilty if she intentionally, knowingly, or recklessly solicited it, requested it, commanded it, or encouraged another person to commit the charged offense, or she intentionally aided another person to commit the charged offense. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at the actual crimes. The instruction 31 is the murder instruction. Tracey Grist as a party to the offense. Let's just focus in on intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Matthew Rastelli. If you want to look at B, you want to look at C, you're certainly free to. There's various theories. You could look at this evidence and decide that it was a depraved indifferent circumstance. But the theory the state has told you today, the theory that the evidence most closely tracks, is that Tracey Marie Grist intentionally or knowingly caused the death of Matthew Rastelli by agreeing with Kevin to have it happen, by agreeing with Kate to have it happen, by soliciting or requesting Kevin to do it, or maybe she just encouraged Kevin to do it. Really, the evidence shows she did all three. She certainly aided by aiding in the ruses of Kate, that she gave Kate to pass to Matt, by helping convince Matt to come into the home to be ambushed by Kevin. Then we look at instruction 34, conspiracy. The only one of the charges that is not a party to the offense charge. On this one, a little bit more simple in some ways. Tracey Grist intended that the murder be performed, agreed one or more persons to engage in conduct or performance of the murder. So you could almost think of it like loosely as almost like a Russian nesting doll, right? That she conspired, but that's a lot less of a crime in a certain sense than being a party to the offense, right? She can agree that the murder happens without necessarily doing all the soliciting, all the encouraging, all the aiding, right? She just agrees with them to engage or cause it in any little bit of I should probably rephrase that slightly differently. She agreed and then took a substantial step along the way towards committing it. And the substantial step could be a little bit or far less than the party to the offense soliciting or encouraging or aiding. Then we have the obstruction of justice, back to the party to the offense. And you know, we have this, and it's a little bit lengthy, but I want you to compare that to 36 while we're doing this. So Tracey as a party to the offense, had the intent to hinder, delay, or prevent the investigation, the apprehension or prosecution, conviction, or punishment of any person, regarding conduct constituting a criminal offense, and then did one of these three things: altered, destroyed, concealed, or removed, made or presented or used anything known to be false, or provided false information. 36 makes this easy by putting that in plain language, what that means. What that means is, did she plant the knife, or was she a party to the offense of planting the knife? And or did she make an untruthful statement to 911 or the police about Matthew Rastelli having the knife before Kevin Ellis shot him? And then we have instructions 37 and 38. They are substantially the same. They are both the offense of commission of domestic violence in the presence of a child. Count 37 represents Steele being upstairs in the bedroom when Matthew was shot. 38 represents Cheyenne being in the bedroom upstairs while Matthew was shot. And 39, instruction 39 just simply points out that no one is disputing that Matthew and Tracey were cohabitants. One more thing I may want you to look at on the obstruction charge before we move on from the instructions. That is for planting the knife or the lies. And I want you to consider on that one Tracey's conflicting stories about the knife. You can see the evidence for yourself. There's no way she didn't see the knife, but think about the conflicting stories about a related point to the knife. She told Diane that she hadn't checked the pulse. She told 911 that Kevin had checked the pulse. And then her testimony is that she had checked the neck and the wrist twice. There's no way that she leaned down to check the neck or the wrist and didn't see that knife. On the other hand, there's no way that that knife was in that hand until she and Kevin planted it. So members of the jury, we're reaching the end here. Are you firmly convinced that's the standard? Are you firmly convinced that Tracey is the reason for or cause of Matthew's death? Are you firmly convinced that she did one of these things: solicit, request, command, encourage, or aid the murder of Matthew Rastelli? I want to end with the words of her co-conspirators. There were three persons involved in this murder: Kate, Tracey, and Kevin. Again, you, Kate, you can corroborate Kate. She came in, she testified. Bluntly, her testimony didn't go well. She clearly has issues, to put it nicely. But she gave a very specific description about the conspiracy and what was happening. She gave a very specific description of how she even asked Tracey to call it off, and Tracey said no. And you may think there's reasons to discount her because of that credibility instruction. At the same time, you also have the third person in the conspiracy. And what did the third person in the conspiracy say in the recorded phone call? Kevin said also that this was Tracey's idea. Kevin admits to his involvement. And Kevin says that he tried to go to Tracey and say, "Are you sure this isn't the best idea you're having? You will affect so many, many lives."
She ruined so many lives, and I'm worried to hurt her feelings.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you something now, a little extra.
What's that?
Oh, I asked if she was sure.
She was sure?
Mm-hmm. Because she was like, she didn't tell me anything about all this stuff that happened. And I was like, "Are you sure this is exactly what going to happen?" And I'm like, she's scheming and doing all this. And she said yes. And she beat Cheyenne. That was her response. Or he beat Cheyenne.
Oh my God.
I never heard it here. I'm sorry that I want to tell you that for so long.
No, I know. I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine.
And I
That's
feel
so
like
sad.
I still bear so much of the blame too for all this.
I'm so, and then it makes me so mad that she's caused you to have to live with this.
I mean,
Like, it's,
I could have done something different. I should have stood up and I should have said no.
yeah. Yeah. But your mom should have never asked you that. You should have never had to have to say no.
The same person who planned this is the same person who baked cookies. It's the same, like,
And that's wild. Like, she's the one who made me my chocolate chip cookies without chocolate chips.
I know,
Yeah.
and blueberry muffin cake for your birthday. What?
But this is what she wanted to do. This is, I mean, she had it, there's consequences. She had to.
I just don't think, she just doesn't think far enough ahead. She never has. And I think she just is so used to getting away with everything, she just,
I literally warned her. I said, this will change so many lives. You won't even know how many lives it's going to change.
oh my God, you said that? That's, wow.
Yes. I said, this is a decision you can't take back. I said that to her.
Wow, Kevin.
Yeah, so there's that. There's
You are the
fucking
voice
that.
of reason, and we all wish we could have, like, seriously, that's what Rachel and I were talking about, like, the reason she didn't want to tell us is because she didn't want us to hear our opinion. But you gave her the opinion that we would have given her, like, you,
I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know I got it across very eloquently and very efficiently. Of like, this is not the best idea you're having. Like, think about it for a second.
oh my God.
So, and then that's why I feel so much blame, because I would step up at that point and be like, you know what, no, I need to take my own advice.
Yeah.
I trusted her.
Whose idea was this? Tracey Grist. Whose ruse was it to get Matthew to come to Utah? Tracey. Who manipulated Kevin into shooting Matthew? Tracey. Who had Rachel clear the house and call Tim off? Tracey. Who had Tara Lynn help her create false texts claiming reconciliation and joy over reunion? Tracey. Whose gun was it? Tracey. Whose knife was it? Tracey. Who knew this would affect so many, many lives? Tracey. Who hated Matthew Rastelli? Tracey. Who was warned? Tracey. Who can't take it back? Tracey. Whose crime was this? We ask you to find Tracey Grist guilty of murder for causing the death of Matthew Rastelli by encouraging it, soliciting it, requesting it, and aiding it to happen. Guilty of conspiracy for agreeing with Kate and Kevin to end Matthew's life. Guilty of obstruction, planting the knife, and lying to police. And guilty of 2 counts of domestic violence in the presence of a child. For having Matthew killed while his 2 small children were asleep upstairs. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Basler.
Wow, I didn't think he was gonna ever end. The jury need a break.
That's a lot to digest. It's 2 hours. included words like she's not leaving on a jet plane, as sure as the day goes long. This isn't a joke. This isn't an opportunity to write a novel. This isn't a benefit to come up with great little catchy phrases. This is about a man who came up from California to be with his family, and now he is dead. It is nothing to belittle, take light of. It is a serious matter and a serious allegation and a serious and devastating loss. When you listen to the phone calls between Kate and Matt on the day, July 12th, they're just happy, you know? Hey, how you doing? I passed the water park. They're just happy. You can tell, at least I can, that he's happy to be getting this over with. What? Of the separation between him and his kids and his babies, and 3 weeks of probably, in his eyes, hell, even though he had to sort of endure it alone because his wife took his kids. But there's a lot to this story that the state has produced with their big team of people and their big stuff that they have. That certainly is intimidating to anyone faced with these things. And when you look at all the red in that little figure that was presented to you, the graphing, it's because they produced it. It didn't account for all the other text and all the other stuff. It just, they produced the red. They produced it. They present it. They intimidate with it. Law enforcement intimidates with it to try and prove their case as well. And it's intimidating. It's intimidating what could happen when you enter a plea, what could happen when you resolve a case, when they present, you have no choice. Well, today we had a choice. And the choice is to plead not guilty, that I wasn't part of a conspiracy, that there was just a tragic thing that happened. And did it happen? Yeah, it happened. In my opening statements, I said that the state had a narrative, and Kate was required to follow that narrative. And Kate came here and testified about a big plan. And I referred to it as a messy plan. I was mocked for saying that, frankly. This is a crazy plan. This is ridiculous. This is a plan where they had an idea back in January or February to murder Matt because he doesn't want to go to Disneyland, or in May to murder Matt because he said that Tracey told Kate that she used the smoking camper too much, or that Tracey said to Matt, I want the kids to come for the summer California, and he got mad about that. The reality is, and I think the truth is, and that's what you're here to really weigh out, this has been a volatile family regarding Matt and Kate for a long, long time. Not just a year, not just since 2024, but 23, 22, 21, 19, 18, 17. I mean, these have been volatile about the relationship for a long, long time. It was known to all the family members, every single one. Tim referred to himself as a peacemaker or a peacekeeper. Why do you have to be one unless there's not peace, right? Do you have a family peacekeeper? I guess we sort of do in my family, but we really don't have this kind of need to keep peace. I'm a grandpa. I got grandkids. I got in-law kids. I love my grandkids. I love them all. It's great. But the truth is, sometimes I need to tread a little lightly with some of the things I say to my kids. Sometimes I need to tread a little lightly with some of the things I say to my in-law kids. Sometimes I need to tread a little lightly with my little guy who's my little grandson, just because I want to make sure we continue to have a good relationship. So I love them. And I know all of you know that to be true. You just sometimes have to tread lightly. Sometimes, believe it or not, my kids don't follow my advice. No matter how logical I am, and believe me, I think I'm very logical. But they just don't, because they think they're smart, or they think they have better knowledge about something. Sometimes it's really important. Sometimes it's, hey, you need to maybe treat your wife a little bit better. Yeah, those conversations actually occur in my family. They occur between my wife and me too. So, it's an ongoing process of trying to get things better. But that doesn't lead to some huge conspiracy about murder when nothing said today talks about the fact that the killer is Kevin. Kevin killed a guy. He shot a guy 7 times. And that officer's testimony, that expert, he talked about how he's trained that you have to unload till the object is not moving. They're trained that because this inclination is not to do that. The inclination is just to shoot. But we never heard anything about Kevin being high on cocaine today. We never heard about Kevin being out of his mind on the impairment of a controlled substance, because that doesn't matter. That's not really a fact. That's not a fact to be considered, I guess. It's a consideration for me, because it makes me think that that guy's not thinking right, that guy is not thinking properly, that guy's impaired. Cocaine is a big drug. It's a big drug. Not discussed. Doesn't matter. I'd like to pull out, and I'm not sure where this audio is, and maybe Faye could help, but I'd like the exhibit of Kate at the police station. And the reason I would like to pull up this exhibit is because we know what Kate did in furtherance of this plan. She had it all planned out. Indeed, she had until February to plan it out. She was ready to murder him because of the Disney fight, and she was ready to come up with all these ideas. And she included Rachel in that because Rachel, the poor little girl who got, cross-examined, direct examined by prosecution there, being basically accused of wanting to shoot Matt too. And Tara Lynn. And all the family knows that the real plan is to kill Matt. And the best plan they have is we're just going to kill Matt. Even though we have all this time to prep for it and all this time to prepare for it, we're just going to kill Matt. Nothing else? Well, I'll tell you, I watch enough shows where I could come up with a plan a little bit better than what we see Tracey provide the police when she goes to the police station. Do we have that up? Do you have that up? Tracey at the police station. Did I say Kate? My client, Tracey at the police station. As you might remember, Tracey was on the front yard. She was talking to law enforcement a little bit. She had her phone in her hand. She testified that she called a police officer. That's probably not true because everything Tracey says is a lie. Tracey probably didn't call the lawyer because everything she says is a lie. However, the lawyer appeared when she wasn't allowed to use the phone any further. So maybe it was true what Tracey was saying, right? She did call the lawyer and the lawyer came. If we can hit play. These are unrefuted facts that you cannot challenge.
My supervisor told me just for the meantime, didn't want us to take your phone just for right now.
They took her phone.
So we'll get it back once we're done. If you need to make a phone call, so I'll give it to you. So I know that you had mentioned that you may want to talk to a lawyer friend that you have. So even if you're interested, doesn't mean you're in trouble.
We can pause it right there. Now, this is part of the plan. This is the great plan between Kate and Kevin and Tracey. Right here is part of their plan. You can hit play.
So you have the right to remain silent, and you say you can or use against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him or her present while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before the questioning if you wish. You can at any time exercise these rights and not have or not answering questions or making statements. Do you understand these rights? Having these rights in mind, do you still want to talk to me? Do you still want to have that lawyer present when you talk to me?
I can talk a little.
Okay, sounds good. So what exactly were you there for?
It's my house.
It's your house. Your daughter was just visiting, staying. Or were you planning on staying the night, or?
My daughter,
Mhm.
she was.
Oh, gotcha. So she's visiting from California. Okay. And was she there with her husband? No. Okay.
He's awful.
Mhm. Gotcha. And she brought her 2 kids with her?
Yeah.
And they just have those 2 kids? Oh, nice.
There's no paperwork or anything. She just came.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Did you go pick her up, or did she fly here or drive herself? Or?
She rented a car.
Rented a car. Gotcha. And was that his truck outside of your house? Both of theirs?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know when I say his, hers, yeah, thank you for clarifying that with both of theirs, but, so what kind of problems were they having? Do you know? You don't know? Okay.
We can pause that. I've heard Kate talk about this relationship with Matt. I've seen the video of the wet tortillas. I've heard about Disney. I've heard about the smoke trailer. I couldn't even answer what their relationship is like. So when Tracey is answering that, I would imagine she's thinking, hey man, there's so many things here. They just don't get along. She came up here, they just don't get along. That's what I'm seeing. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's the plan to say they aren't having a problem. And really, he just came as a mysterious man at night, had a knife, and we shot him. We can use common sense on that. We can hit play.
I don't know.
And that's okay, if you don't know, right? So,
I mean, I have an idea, but it's so nebulous, so I don't know.
gotcha. Well, sometimes little details for us kind of paint the picture and to whatever that exactly happened, right? So that's why I ask. When did he get here to Utah? Do you know?
I think about a little bit after 10.
A little bit after 10. Okay. And did he call beforehand? Did he text? Did she know he was on his
She knew
way?
he was coming, and she was going to talk with him. And I was in the kitchen, and next thing I know, he was in the kitchen. It's like, hey, I go, hi.
Do you know if they had a conversation before? Or?
I have no idea.
Okay. Can I walk for me what was happening when you were in the kitchen? He showed up. No, what happened?
I was in the kitchen, and I was sitting on the counter, because I could do that, sit in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And he said hi, and then he walked into the other room, but he was acting different.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by he was acting
He was
different?
just, agitated.
Mm-hmm. What happened after that, after he walked away?
He walked away.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Is Katie upstairs?" And I said, "Yeah, she'll come down." That's the last I heard gunshots. But no more gunshots now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've been really fired. Separating something.
Okay. And what were you doing when you heard the gunshots?
Just sitting on the counter.
Just in the same spot when you walked in?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what did you do after you heard the gunshots?
I ran into the bottom of the stairs to go check on my daughter. I thought something might happen to my daughter.
Gotcha. And what did you see when you went down the stairs?
On the ground, laying down, face down.
And then what happened?
I called 911.
Mm-hmm. What was your daughter doing at all when you came downstairs?
When I came down, what?
Yeah, when you came
I
down the
went
stairs.
upstairs.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. I misunderstood. Do you know who this is?
This is the family attorney.
Oh, gotcha.
Hey,
We're here
talk to
for you.
Kevin, talk to Kevin.
Okay.
Kevin. So could you take him to Kevin, please?
Yep.
There you go. Is that the guy that you were talking about? Oh, perfect. There you go. He's here. Do you want him present?
No.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, when you had, I thought you had said that you was downstairs. Gotcha. So you went upstairs to see when you heard the gunshots. My apologies, I misunderstood you.
No, everything happened on the main floor.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to the hallway. And then I went upstairs and I just said, "Stay here, don't come downstairs." And I went downstairs.
And that was to
My daughter Katie.
okay.
So I didn't want her to see.
Okay, I'm gonna just, because obviously I was confused somewhere, so I'm just gonna back up a little bit. Kind of run me through you sitting on the counter in your kitchen, hearing the gunshots, and then what happened after that.
I went and looked in the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
Or I went to the bottom of the stairs and that's the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else happened.
So after you went to the bottom of the stairs, then you went upstairs and
Yeah, and I
with your daughter.
she said, "What happened?" I said, "She's here. Just don't come downstairs, please don't come downstairs, please don't come downstairs." I didn't want her downstairs.
And then what happened?
I know I called 911.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked if I had to see her on this. Just looking at him on the ground. And then drove away.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think the neighbor upstairs, Caitlin, heard a noise because she asked me if I was okay. So when I went to call, she said, "Is everything okay?"
What's your daughter's name? Sorry, I don't keep referring to her as your daughter, Katie. Okay, and you probably mentioned that, but I heard Caitlin, and I didn't want to get confused. Where were Caitlin's kids at when this happened? Sleeping. Okay, and that's on the upstairs level. Where was Kevin at when this was going on? Well, thank you for letting me
Yeah.
know on your side of things what was going on. So I'll step out, and if we have more questions for you, I'll let you know. Okay. Thanks.
It's 11:42 that night, shooting taking place 10 after 10, something like that. If we can play the next video.
Thanks. Sure. You can have that seat. Okay, Tracy, I just wanted to kind of give some time to think. I know you were saying a lot of I don't knows and stuff like that, but is anything else that come to your mind right now? No, not at all. Okay.
So talk. Do his parents know? Did someone call his parents?
I assume someone has at this point. I've only been here with you, to be honest, so all that information I don't even know myself. The only information I know is kind of what you've told me, and that's about it. So.
Or is Katie here too?
I believe she is, and with her kids came with her, yeah, so they're not alone by themselves.
Where's Rory?
We're at Rachel's house.
In Ogden? Okay.
I don't know. Is that another kid?
Rory's my daughter, Rachel's
just
my
daughter.
other daughter.
Gotcha. So just to be like candid, I kind of feel like you do know a little bit more than you're letting on.
Nope.
Okay.
It was, he appeared,
And
and I was in the kitchen. And
I guess
did
I'm
that.
more talking about with kind of stuff with Kevin.
With Kevin? Nope.
Not at all.
No idea where he was. No.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, honestly, it's the best policy.
I'm
when it
telling-
comes to-
I almost know nothing.
Okay.
She schools me on being honest.
Well, good. We always need someone looking after each other, right? To be honest and forthright, right? So, and again, that's just
And
kind of the vibe that I'm getting. So.
And I've told her
Mhm.
that the most important thing is to be honest and truthful, and we can decline to answer if we want to, and she will do that. But she's not, so far as I know, withholding anything.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I just wanted to come in here and see if you did remember me, because again, like I said, I know you were saying like a lot of I don't knows, and so I just wanted to see if you remembered anything else, and talking with it a little bit, but nothing comes to mind at all.
I interacted with Matt for like maybe 3 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see Kevin, and Matt went around the corner, and by the time I don't even know, I didn't see anything. All I heard was noise.
What were the noises that you were hearing?
The shots.
That was the only
Yeah.
noises. There's no conversation, no confrontation at all.
Not that I heard.
Gotcha.
Have you been to the house? Do you know the layout?
I haven't, so.
This is the plan. 3 months in the making. This is the plan. For Tracy to say, he came in the house, said, "Where's Kate?" And then I don't hear anything, no confrontation, no arguing, and then gunshots. That's the plan. That's ridiculous. If you have a plan, you're gonna have some kind of plan, aren't you? I mean, just previous, it's now 1:47 in the morning on this video. Kevin had already said he had a knife and I shot him. My client said there's not even an argument. I heard nothing like that. Just where is she? And so we can pull that down. And so now we have to go into the delving of other things that the state is presenting, the government is presenting to be these reasons, sort of like leaving on a jet plane. We're just going to pull it out from other lyrics and come up with ideas. Like number one, the reason that we're coming to have Matt murdered is because of this terrible custody fight. Well, there was no custody fight. The only thing about custody in this whole case is a telephone conversation that Kate had with a lawyer who said, hey, if you're in California and then you go to another state, he can file some paperwork to have you come back if you don't agree on it. And then proceed forward in a divorce case. Tracey has been divorced 4 times, has custody, has shared time. The kids have said, I saw my dad every other weekend. The sisters didn't come as much, but I did with my brother. That sounds like something I hear all over the place. But because of some big custody fight, there wasn't a custody fight. There was going to be. Let's not confuse ourselves, right? There's going to be a custody fight. I don't think they're going to last in this marriage, to be honest. If Kate and him drove back to California, maybe they'd give it a try. But I honestly think, personally me, her substance use, smoking weed all the time, being high all the time, Matt's trying to get off alcohol and Buddy's alcohol problem, they're just such a volatile relationship. I just don't see it lasting if this horrible experience didn't happen. Just don't see it lasting. I see obviously a divorce coming on the horizon. I also think that's the reason they have a storage unit, that she had stuff that she left in California, knowing that at one point California is going to have to be a home plate somewhere in relation to the divorce of the kids. So some ruse of this being a big custody fight, it's not a big custody fight. Frankly, we all know where most kids go in custody fights anyway, don't we? Those are from mom. Dads get the weekends and holidays. Matt's not working. Mom's working for an Airbnb sort of as a side hustle job. But the divorce just isn't a custody fight. It's the preliminary. You know what you have when you do a divorce? You have a conversation to talk about the stuff and the kids. That's what you do. The real estate, the TVs, if you care, the DVRs, if you care, and anything of value, if you care. And then the personal things. You always talk about those. Because there are some things that are personal, you know, my mom's ring and my dad's ring and those things. But the big plan, this is it. My client is referred to as the hub, right? And the kids are the spokes. And she's the conspirator trying to get all of them to be included. I don't think that's what you heard at all. We heard in the closing that they had time to stage the scene. Well, that's a pretty terrible staging of the scene to say that no one's arguing, no one's fighting, and all we have is gunshots. And the question was the final straw in the battle between Mom and Matt, Mom being Tracey. They had a Disney battle because Matt, and the exhibit's there for you to see, Matt was going to decline the Disney trip, and because he declined the Disney trip, the 2 little kids aren't coming either. Well, guess what? They went to Disney, and they had a fun time, and it was a good time. Oh, there was an incident that Tara Lynn saw where Matt was abusive towards his kids. But over the time of the Disney, everyone had testified it was good. Everyone got along. Now, before that, Matt was very angry at Tracey. And he didn't want to go to Disneyland. And then later, in May, Matt and Tracey got into it again. As Tracey testifies, she testifies that I talked to Matt about coming to Utah with Kate and the kids. Matt did not like that idea. We needed the money to stay in California. Kate needed to work. I guess Matt was trying to work. I don't know. It just seemed like that volatile relationship, right? And then the text where Kate says, hey, Matt said it's okay if you come here. So the scenario of that is all pretty simple. Tracey had a friend, Amy, whose husband died. She was an invalid in a lot of ways. All of her kids knew this person. She'd known him for 38 years. Tara Lynn had been there. Kate had been there. People had been there to Amy's house. And my client flew in. On the way to flying in, and you look at the text, look at the times. I'm getting on the plane early in the morning. A little bit later, after she said, I'm getting on the plane, Kate texts, Matt said, it's okay, you can come over to the house. And my client spent the night at the house. So this, once again, plan of, Disney, she wants to kill him and strangle him. And then in April or May, she goes and spends the night at the house. He spends time with Matt. This relationship, torn apart a little bit, patched up a little bit, sounds like family, doesn't it? And it happens. It doesn't resort to a murder. But it happens. And so Matt said, yeah, come to the house. And so she did. She spent time at the house, then had the conversation with him. And then he accused Kate. Let me get this right. He was mad because there was a conversation about Kate spending too much time in the smoke truck, in the smoke camp. And Tracey says, he's lying. That's not what I talked to him about. I talked to him about going to Utah, which is probably not what Matt wanted Kate to hear. So I had to give a reason why he's ticked off at Tracey. But is that surprising? I mean, if you think about Rachel had said, we'd always had a confrontational family life between Matt and Kate and us. Tara Lynn, the same thing. We've always had a confrontational family life with Matt and Kate and us. Even Tim, I had to be the peacemaker because Matt and Kate and us. It's a common theme. Everyone knew. It was just a hard marriage. And that video that we showed of those two just battling about the stupidest thing. It was very normal for them. And the whole family knew. But they got over it. Indeed, they got over it enough that they're going to go to Las Vegas, Matt and Kate, go with Diane, Matt's mom, and spend some time in Vegas, but then that got canceled. And it got canceled because they just weren't getting along. And Diane probably just didn't want to be around that volatile relationship. And frankly, it seemed obvious Kate was ready to call it. Kate was ready to go. Shortly thereafter, Kate did go. And that was a big plan. It was a big plan. It was a plan to go and murder him. No, it wasn't. It was a plan for Kate to go and talk about, how am I going to get this divorce thing figured out? Indeed, in June, after Kate got there, you saw a text today where my client sent to Tara, can you talk to her about talking to a lawyer? I think the day was June 29th. He's talked to her about talking to a lawyer, what she should say to a lawyer. I think the reality is, I'm not going to trust Tracey to have much conversation with the lawyer, to be honest. She's so sweet. She's high all the time. She's volatile. She's all over the place. You saw her in the stand. Tracey used to have a much more demeanor about herself to be able to handle a good conversation. So is it uncommon when these guys talk every day anyway to say, hey, you talk to her about having a lawyer? Yet that gets construed so that the narrative of the prosecution can imply is a big plan. So you can follow that narrative to make sure the narrative is followed. And the narrative is followed so much to the point that it becomes unbearable. Unbearable for Kate. She realizes with all this narrative and all of these things packed into a big web where all these colors are pointing to her. You can just imagine when it's pointing to Kate, all the colors in this spreadsheet are all red. Look, Kate, you. Look, Kate, you. Look, Kate, you. You're red, you're red, you're red, you're red. Look what you did. And Kate needed to make a deal because she was afraid of this big environment coming after her. with all of these prosecutors and all of their equipment at their disposal, sometimes it just gets overwhelming and you need to cut your loss. And Kate did. I had a blow-up moment in this trial where I couldn't believe Kate was saying the amount of sentencing time she was saying. If we can pull up the matrix, which I think is defense exhibit number 2 at the matrix. Three. So I lost my stuff for a minute and I had to ask for a break and I had to leave the room. I had to go get my stuff so that I could really, honestly, help Kate be honest. Because at the bottom of this box, it shows 108 months. If you could show the bottom of that box. Her life, she wouldn't agree to that. No, it's not 108 months. It's for life. If you look on the left side, aggravated murder, 300 months, category 1. First degree murder, 240 months. We all know what Kate was charged with. She was charged with first degree murder, and she ended a deal of second degree murder. 10 years off of her sentence. But there was a caveat. And the caveat for her to get 10 years, because Kate's 40, for her to get 10 years, is she had to tell the truth to the prosecution. That was a caveat. She had to tell their story. And so as part of that, she came up with her proffer of evidence letter. And that's an exhibit too. In that proffer of evidence, she talks about never talked to Kevin, never did this, never did that, but yet we had a plan. It was just nonsense. Indeed, not only did she have to have a proffer, which her attorney provided for her, but she also had to give an interview. And when she gave the interview, it didn't go well. And the reason it didn't go well is because police told her, you need to be honest. And I asked her that. But you had to do something with the plan for him to come to the house. Right. So you knew that, correct? Yes. I want to hear it. Yes. Boy. I made sure he would come inside the house. Yes. That part of the plan? Yes. So even in every interview where she's there to tell the truth and give justice for Matt, give justice for her kids, the officer says, I want to hear it. Why do you want to hear it if she's saying it? It's because she's making up whatever plan you're telling her to make up. And she'll agree with it because she wants the 108 months. She doesn't want the 240 months. She's willing to do that. It's unrefuted. Unrefuted evidence that she said that the officer said that. I want to hear it. And then, of course, at the end, it said, the plan isn't on, right? It's the officer. And she says, I feel like it was 50. She was just willing to say what she needed to say. She felt overwhelmed by what was against her, by a team of lawyers, by a team of law enforcement, by texts. She was overwhelmed with it. And she had to take the deal. She wanted to get out of, she wanted 108 months. Well, she declined it for a time. We took the break, came back, and I said, didn't you say that you were getting this deal for 108 months. And she talked about, well, I'm in prison now and things are different now. Get it and figured out. These jury instructions I've seen many, many times in my career because they're sort of standard. They're standard in a lot of ways according to the case. Some are case specific, like what is the charge. Most of these instructions are over years and centuries of instructions to juries to get refined to what we have before us here. Some of these instructions I would ask that you look at with close attention. Number is the reason for instruction. Just for a very quick, I know what's going on, evidence. Evidence has to be decided on a certain standard. And there's many different standards depending on the kind of case you. A lot of people don't really realize this, but being a lawyer, I went to school. Criminal cases is required to speak beyond a reasonable doubt. America with TVs, we've heard of that many, many times. But there are many cases that do not require reasonable doubt. But we want a level of proof possible to ensure justice is served. We don't get it as a community, as a form of giving. But there are other cases. And so going down the tier is usually, you have to have clear and convincing evidence if you want.
I was doing that. Can y'all hear me over there?
But to have the kids be taken away in shelter.
When I'm talking over
foster care. Unreasonable doubt, but you need clear and convincing evidence. And if you get in a car accident, you break your leg, sue the guy appropriately, you have to prove by preponderance.
Put a 1 in the chat if you're able to hear me when I'm talking over the stream. I don't know. I'm trying to do it. I don't have any, just these ones. Let me see. Sometimes he do it. Sometimes
The evidence. And preponderance is sort of like a little bit more than 50%, you know.
let me refresh and see if that'll help us. Oh, we are at 257. Okay.
And in this case, that's required as well.
It won't even let me go back.
See, I never said that. To tell you, I have a confrontational relationship with Matt, but sometimes it's not. I love my kids, and Matt's part of the family. We all got a t-shirt. And the truth is that we do have confrontations. And the truth is, yeah, I said I'm gonna strangle him. He's gonna cancel the Disney trip. And then I want to kill him for lying about saying that I'm mad about her being in the pot house or the pot camp or whatever it's called. See, I never said that. I said to him that, hey, be good if Kate came to Utah in the summer and spent some time with the grandkids and the other cousins, which he did not. I could go on and on about the lies that Kate provided in not only her testimony with us, but also her testimony in the other case, and also her interview testimony with the officers on June 16th. I could go on and on about that. But I think that's very clear that her just testimony was filled with fear, non-truth, defeated her own alleged purpose for coming forward of truth and justice, and really falls in the face of fear that she's going to spend a lot more time in prison. Instruction 13 is mental state. In the third paragraph, it says, for each offense, the law defines what kind of mental state, intentional and knowingly. And in this case, that's required as well.
So y'all unable to hear me when I'm talking now?
Sorry.
Put a 1 in the chat if you're able to hear me. I'm trying to.
Instruction 28, it's titled Mental States Defined. And this gives really some good instruction. A person acts intentionally when they engage in certain conduct or causes a certain result. Well, I know someone who engaged in certain conduct, and it was Kevin Ellis. Kevin Ellis grabbed a gun and he shot an unarmed man that he said had a knife. And he shot him 7 times. And it caused the result of his death. A person acts knowingly if he is aware of the conduct, aware of the particular surroundings, aware that the conduct is reasonably certain to cause a result. My client testified, to be truthful to you, that she was not aware of that conduct, that she was not aware Kevin was intending to get a gun and kill Matt. Indeed, she was hoping that Kate would be coming down soon to greet Matt because she wasn't exactly sure when he was getting there, but he was going to be there soon. And the inference of that intent. The elements of the crime are then provided in instructions. Instruction 31. This is the instruction of the elements of murder. That Tracey intentionally and knowingly caused the death of Matt Rispelli. It is surprising to me in this case how people are minimizing the actions of Kevin Ellis. He shot a man. He was high on cocaine. He made lies. And it seems to be minimized in this. In fact, well, I'll get to that in a minute. Instruction 34 is conspiracy. Conspiracy is if Tracey Grist intended that conduct constituting the crime of murder be performed and agreed with one or more persons to engage in the cause of performance of conduct. The state would have you believe that this is a long time plan. This is a long time plan for certain decided well before July 12th, well before July 11th, and that the whole plan on Kate coming to Utah was to murder Matt. That is not what the unrefuted facts show. Indeed, if that were, this is the messiest murder I can think of, murder plan, where my client says, no, he didn't have anything. I didn't even hear a fight. When I saw him, he didn't have a knife in his hand. When I saw him later when he was dead, I did. But when he said, hey, I didn't see a knife in his hand. Why would she say that? Why don't you just say, yeah, he came in agitated, had a knife in his hand, he threatened him. Well, the word agitated is a little interesting. I just drove 10 hours and I pull up to the front yard and my wife's there with my kids who I haven't seen in 3 weeks. And she ain't there to greet me. The heck. I'd probably be agitated if I walked into it. Like, well, okay, I mean, you know I'm here. So for my client just to volunteer, just off the cuff, he seemed agitated. Didn't say angry, mad, just seemed off. She did say he didn't have a knife. Did not have a knife. That's because she's helping the plan, helping the conspiracy. and the obstruction. The obstruction that she planted the knife. Her testimony is when I first saw the body, I looked at it. I don't remember what its real visual was. I went upstairs. I knew Kevin had shot him. Kevin said he had a knife. Went upstairs. I said, Kate, don't come down, don't come down. Came downstairs, had to find my phone, called 911. There's a confusion about 911, frankly, because they used the name Caitlin. And are you Caitlin or something like that? And my client was confused on the 911 call because there's Katie and there's Caitlin, and Caitlin had already called. It is confusing. But on the obstruction that she planted the knife or lied to the 911 call. Her testimony was Kevin said he had a knife. She didn't say he had a knife, Kevin. No, she said he didn't have a knife. And then when she went over to where the body was, Kevin said he had a knife. And she's relaying that to 911. That all of a sudden comes up to another charge the state can charge against you, right? Well, there's another one, obstruction. There's another one, unless you follow our guidelines of a plea. Unless you agree to plead to murder, conspiracy, and discharge of a firearm. On the elements of murder, that you intentionally and knowingly caused the death of Matthew Stone. And there is someone who did that. It's Kevin. And there's an audio between Kevin and Tara Lynn. And he says, I have something I need to tell you. I talked to her. And Tara Lynn is just, oh, wow, that's so hard. That's so hard on you. I don't know about you guys, but murder is the last thing in my mind. If I'm mad at someone, that's the last thing in my mind. And I don't know that I'm saying to a person who's been in jail for like almost 2 years, that's so hard for you. I think more the question I'd be saying is, why'd you shoot him 7 times? What happened? None of that was talked about in that tape. I had the gun, he had the knife, he came at me. None of that. I was on cocaine. She doesn't even say to him, you use cocaine? When did you start using cocaine? None of that conversation was talked about. She said on the stand, I didn't know he used cocaine. Rachel said on the stand, I didn't know he used cocaine. Tracey got on the stand, I didn't know he used cocaine. No one knew he used cocaine. They're all very surprised. Kate said, I didn't know he used cocaine. I know he didn't like weed. None of that kind of conversation took place between Tara and him, but he was offering this information to her. And I suppose that he's offering this information to her for one reason. And it's something I know because I'm in this world of the criminal justice system. And that is, jail is hard. When you go to jail, you have one thing, and that is called time. You are doing time all day. When you sleep, you get to sleep. When you wake up, you're doing time. And you have these little respites while you're serving your time to have phone calls. They're all recorded. Sometimes you get letters, but it's mainly phone calls. And as you have these phone calls, you can establish relationships with people and confirm relationships with people and reestablish and make sure those relationships are positive, because frankly, those are the only positive relationships you have in prison and jail. The relationships in jail and prison are scary. It's a scary place. It's where hard people live. And to establish those relationships and to try and garner some good relationships that you can do with one another on the phone is hugely valuable. And Kevin wanted to provide his sister a continuation of that relationship so that she'd take his calls, that she'd be available, that she can just talk to him, so that he can have a reprieve from the jail and prison where he is. Because it's hard. I'm not saying it's not supposed to be hard, because it is supposed to be hard. But the truth is, it is hard. And it's hard because that's what you want. You want to lock people up so they don't have the opportunities to hurt. But he never accepts your real responsibility except, I should have said no. I should have this, I should have that. And then Tara Lynn says, that's so wild while you gave an opinion. I should have given Mom that opinion. With Rachel, we would have given our opinion. And I'm listening to this thinking, what are you talking about? An opinion about a plan to kill someone? Is that how you're talking to this guy? I mean, come on. If I'm having that conversation with anyone, whether it's my firstborn or my neighbor 16 blocks away, I'm not saying those kind of things about the idea of murder. I could have had a different opinion. A different opinion? She felt sorry for him. She felt sorry that he was convicted. She felt sorry that he's going through his hard time, because he is. Because he killed a man. Because he killed a man while he was high on cocaine. Because that's what happened. There's plenty of talk of harm. I'm going to strangle him. I'm going to kill him. I'm mad at him. Got my tortillas wet. There's plenty of talk about harm and anger and volatility. But there's no plan to kill Matt. The plan for Matt was to come and have a conversation with Kate, and she is intimidated by the whole process because her name on their spreadsheets was red, 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 red. You're going to do a lifer. And you know what? We'll give you 108. And you've already done 2. That's wrong. 108 months, you've already done 2 years. We'll give you that. But you need to give us what the plan is. And what she said, as a 50-50. That certainly doesn't seem like a plan. That seems like you just don't know until a dude on coke decides to grab a gun and kill a man. I would ask that you find Tracey Grist not guilty. The state has not proven this case. What they've done is they've created a huge web to try and create a narrative that they got some people to follow. It's just not what is the truth.
Thank you, Mr. Finstar. Can I see you and Mr. Pomeroy up here for me, please? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know we've been going 3 hours. Mr. Pomeroy just confirmed to me he's going to be under 10 minutes, and then we'll do our recess and we'll start the deliberations. We will have, is it here?
Oh, wow.
We are ordering in lunch for you, so we will have food for you. Mr. Pomeroy, rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor, we're just putting up one exhibit and then I'll be ready.
Thank you.
You plugged in. Make it full screen. That works. Thank you. So this is Matthew Rastelli. It's pretty obvious what he's doing in this photo. It's a wedding photo. This was Matthew at one of his best times in his life. Matthew was a husband, father to 3 children, son to Diane. Fortunately, in this trial, you also saw Matthew at his worst. But what Matthew was at his worst is what earned him the nickname Olaf. The talkative, friendly, yet obnoxious snowman from a Disney movie. no one feared Matthew. Not really. Made fun of him. Didn't fear him enough to be that worried when he was coming up. None of the family who wasn't in the home and part of the conspiracy thought to call the police. No one checked up on him after he got there for a long time. So why is it that Matthew Rastelli ended up dead? Reasonable doubt is the standard you have to apply to answer that question. Thing about reasonable doubt, it's not imaginary doubt. You can't just say a whole bunch of stuff and distract from the evidence. You have to base it in the evidence. If you have doubt, it must be grounded in that evidence. But when you look at that evidence, you don't see reasonable doubt here. There's a lot talked about the plan. See, never said it was a long-term plan. There was a lot of stuff that built up to that pivotal moment when there was a plan. There was a lot of bad blood, so to speak, that built up until Kevin was willing to shoot Matthew. A lot of bad blood that built up, things that happened until Tracey had enough of that annoyance, she called her son-in-law. It was called a messy plan. Quite frankly, looked pretty good. Utah, shoot, intruder. He had a knife, no one's home. Problem was the neighbor who called 911 too soon. Everything went haywire after that, and the plan fell apart. Not for that, we might not be sitting here today. So when we call it a messy plan, doesn't mean it wasn't a plan. When we call it a failed plan in the cover-up sense, doesn't mean it wasn't a plan. And it doesn't even mean that we're saying that the entire family knew about this plan. That's not at all what we've said in this case. What we've said is that everything that got shared in the family was shared among the entire family, and that Tracey knows to say what to say to get the reaction she wants from her children. And that's what happened here. Without Tracey, this doesn't happen. Without Tracey, Kate didn't lure Matt to Utah. Without Tracey, Kevin did not lie in wait. Without Tracey, Tim would have been there to keep the peace. Without Tracey, Rory and Jake would have been home. Without Tracey, there would have been no gun. Without Tracey, there would have been no knife. Without Tracey, Matthew Rastelli is alive. And to acknowledge this does not minimize Kevin or Kate's involvement in any way. You know, you want to talk about the cocaine? Fine, we can talk about the cocaine. Isn't it a reasonable inference that Kevin did cocaine so he had the nerves to do what his mother asked him? There's a jury instruction that hasn't been looked at too much. Instruction 24. There has been evidence to suggest that persons other than the defendant may have been involved in the crime for which the defendant is on trial. Your duty in this case is to decide only whether the prosecution has proven beyond a reasonable doubt the guilt of the defendant who is on trial. Kate pled guilty. Kevin was convicted. Your only duty to ask Tracey was tied to this murder. And Tracey was tied to this murder. The plan went to hell. The plan didn't work. And Kevin was mad at her. Exhibit 131. Please tell Kevin that if he is mad at me and doesn't want to talk to me, he doesn't have to. I'm mad at me too. The defense said this is a case about a man who came to be with his family. There's truth in that. This case is also about control. Tracey's control over her daughter, Kate. Tracey's control over her son, Kevin. and Tracey's control over her entire family, and ultimately her control over whether Matthew Rastelli lived or died. The evidence in this case shows how she used that control. The law in this case tells you what that means. And your verdict should reflect both. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pomeroy. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're almost ready for you to start your deliberations. There are a few housekeeping matters I need to go over with you first off. As you all know, the jury notice that was sent out to you stated this is scheduled to be 3 weeks. It's not been 3 weeks. The attorneys tell the court how long it's going to be, and I scheduled the time for them. They were more efficient than they anticipated. But because we had a 3-week trial scheduled, it's not uncommon. In fact, it's prudent for us to select what are called alternate jurors. Indeed, about 2 months ago, I had another multi-week jury trial scheduled, and partway through that trial, we lost a juror. But for having an alternate juror, we would have had to start the trial over again. So it's very prudent to keep the case moving forward. It's a prudent use of judicial resources, which means it's a prudent use of your taxpayer resources. We selected 2 of you to be alternate jurors in this case just because of the length of the case. The 2 of you that I'm going to identify in a moment or two, your jury duty service is not over, even though they excuse you to go home, grab your belongings and go home. Because the jury is still working, there still is, although probably remote, there still is an opportunity or a chance that one of them may have an emergency at home. Say, I have 5 kids. I remember getting a call from my wife one day, and one of our children had fallen off the bicycle and broke his arm, and she was on the way to the hospital. I don't want to jinx any of you with young children, but if that were to happen, we would, of course, excuse you to go to the hospital and check out, make sure your child's doing well. And what would happen then is that we would call the next alternate juror in line to come back to the courthouse, and they would start deliberations with you so that we wouldn't have to retry the case over. So for our 2 alternate jurors, the admonition order about forming an opinion about the case, talking about the case, researching the case, using social media, that is still in play, and that order is still there until we call you when the jury has reached their decision, or if we need you to come down. Now, before you leave, I'll ask you to give to my bailiff your cell phone numbers, and we'll call you one way or another unless it's late. If it's late, we'll call you the following morning, but we'll call and let you know what the jury's verdict was or is going to be as a courtesy to you. And once you receive that phone call, then my order to the 2 alternates, or 1 if we need to bring you in, or none if we bring you all in, will go away at that point. And then you'll have the freedom to talk about the case, do research, or just move along and not even think about the case anymore. But the 2 alternate jurors that were selected randomly, this isn't something I do or the attorneys do, it's the computer system that does it, is juror number 40, Mr. Ballard. Could you raise your hand? And juror number 41, Ms. Bitten. You can raise your hand. So you 2 are our alternates. Please make sure that you give to my bailiff your phone numbers and with your names, of course. We'll call you if we need you, or we'll call you, as I mentioned, once we have a final verdict. Please take my order about not talking about this case seriously. And please also do not feel like your time is wasted, that you just spent 7 days doing nothing and now you're going back and wondering what that was all about. If you think about how many days we've spent and how many witnesses you've seen, and you've seen how much time and energy the attorneys have put into this, it's extremely complex and expensive proposition to try a case. If we had to do it again, it would be several months out before my calendar would accommodate this length of the trial. And because of judicial resources and taxpayer resources, we try and be efficient in that time frame. So your service was valuable, is valuable. The advantage is that you don't have to complete the jury deliberations, and more importantly, you're done for state jury selection for the next 2-3 years in Utah County. However, if you move out of the county, the clock starts all over again and you can be selected. So if you move up to Salt Lake or down to Juab, you get that notice, you start all over again. Of course, federal court is a separate sovereign and they can call you in regardless of your service. If you have a justice court in your city, you may be called in for that justice court. That in mind, that is the process. And so you two you can grab your belongings, say goodbye, don't talk about the case, and then give the information to my van will escort you out. The other 8 of you, we've got pizza, is that correct? We've got pizza ordered in. It should be here shortly if it isn't here already. You take your instructions back in with you. The attorneys and my staff will put together the exhibits. It will take a little bit of time, but we will get those back to you. Electronic exhibits will be brought back on a neutralized laptop so you can look at those as well. That in mind, if you'll swear in our deputy, please.
I do solemnly swear that you will take charge of this jury and take them to some private and convenient place where they may deliberate upon their verdict, allowing no one to speak to them, nor do so yourself unless ordered by the court, and return them into court when they have reached the verdict. So help you God.
I did. Thank you. All right, deputy, if you'll take the jury out, please.
All right.
Please be seated. Thank you, counsel. Appreciate the 4 of you and how you tried the case. It's very professional. I watch as I'm listening. I hear you use your first names. It shows me how professionally you're working with each other, that you're not fighting even when you have disagreements. This would be a good case for young law students to study on how to get along and work and try a case. For instance, the state's paralegal was doing all the exhibits for Mr. Facemeyer. That just once again shows the professionalism for both teams. So thank you so much. Anything for the state we need to put on the record?
No, Your Honor.
Anything from the defense?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Once again, well done. If you would, counsel, come up and meet with Faye briefly to make sure that we have all the exhibits organized and put together. Also leave with us your best cell phone number and make sure you're no more than 15, 20 minutes out. If I do have a question from the jury and you're out at your office, Mr. Facemeyer, is your office in Provo?
Freedom.
Freedom. All right. We may just call you on the phone and get permission on the record that way, or if it's more complex, I may ask you to pop in. That in mind, then, thank you so much, counsel. We'll be in recess.
Okay, let the games begin. So we are, I am going to end this stream, which is going to take us over to our verdict watch stream. And in that verdict watch stream, it looks like the winner of what testimony we're going to be rewatching is going to be Tracey's testimony, from what I can see. It looks like Rachel was right behind it. But we will start off with Tracey's testimony, and then if we want to change it at any point in time, we will. I will start off with the beginning of her testimony. So we will head over there. Hopefully everybody can join us. If not, if you're not already onto the Discord, please go on the Discord, and it's free. It's the after party, because when the verdict comes in, we will most likely put it on Discord just in case people are not there in the chat. And I will open up the other room. Let me get that opened up so when you guys go over there, it is all ready. And okay, so awesome. That is opened up, and I am about to send you guys over there now. It should redirect you, so you shouldn't have to click on anything. It should just drop you off right there, unless you decide that you don't want to be dropped off and you make a detour. All right, guys, see you over there.